Nice job, Nate.
Thank
Good
you.
timing.
That was a good pop.
It's a good cork pop. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 190. We are happy to have great people from Watershed Distillery from Columbus, Ohio, back on the show. We've had Anne Dimmick before on
something like that.
3 times? Something like that.
Frequent flyer.
Yeah. So Anne Dimmick, speaking of titles, like we were talking about before the show. And that's all right. So we also have, I'm sorry, before we get into titles, Aaron Harris is on the screen. He is the head distiller of Watershed. And the reason I already brought up the titles is because I want to get into this really quickly. Is you said, Anne, that he is the head distiller. We have not met yet. So out of just doing 10 things at once, I put master distiller on the post today, quickly corrected. But in all fairness, I feel like the first time that we had Anne on, you didn't even know what your title was at that point. And
we're
so
still
I have
making
to ask,
it up.
Exactly. That's my point. I have to ask like, every time you're on the show, it's like, do you have a title? Basically.
Yeah,
And your title now is Barrel
Master. I actually have on my email signature Barrel Master and Resident Bourbon Nerd.
There it is. Resident Bourbon Nerd.
It's a great
It's a job. It's a job, Mom and Dad.
Pays the bills.
All right. So before we get too far into it, we have great sponsors I want to thank. So I want to thank, before we get into it, Tinder Box at Easton. We have the Avo Syncro Caribe, is what we're going to call it, because there is no thing above the E if you look at that.
Okay.
I'm going to call it Caribe.
All right.
It's a new one from Avo. We'll get into that a little bit, but we're going to focus a little bit more on Watershed because of our wonderful guests. But thank you, Tinder Box at Easton, for that cigar, and Avo for putting out another great cigar. I want to thank Altus USA. We have the Upman Nicaragua by AJ Fernandez as a second cigar of the night. Aaron, sorry we couldn't get you cigars, but it looks like you're smoking or you're drinking inside, so I assume you would not be allowed to do that.
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Another time. And then also BS Cigar Company, the gold and silver in stock. So you can check them out at Tinder Box at Easton. All Nicaraguan from Plasencia and Espinosa cigars. They're the ones manufacturing it. And I also want to thank Patreon.com. You guys are amazing. Patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. We have some great support, and you guys have been amazing. I do have some exciting news. Finally, as of today, we have a store, which I didn't put a banner on this yet, but we have a store online where you can actually get T-shirts, which I'm the only one wearing it right now. But that'll be going out. There's a Patreon special page that discounted prices for you guys on that. But with this, it's now available, the Bourbon and BS podcast shirt, where it says, pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together. We have 4 different colors available. They're $25 a piece. And I have a new color coming out, hopefully by the end of the week, for this month. And this is something fun we get to do, and I'll keep you guys posted on this. But it's going to be a pink shirt with black writing, and then $5 of each shirt. Again, $25. $5 of each shirt will go to charity, which I am trying to solidify before I post all that stuff for breast cancer awareness. So stay tuned for that. But it's exciting that we're able to do that with you guys in the community.
Solid.
Yeah. That being said, let's focus on Watershed Distillery, barrel strength, 6-year batch 002. Did I get that right?
You did. You got it.
All right.
And it was finished in
apple brandy casks.
Yes. That were also made at Watershed Distillery. Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting quizzed.
No, it's fine.
Well,
I've got the experts here.
And initially, you'd before we went live, you'd called it the 10-year, which on the back label, it still has the 10th anniversary logo.
All right, I'm just saying.
Somebody's got to update those labels.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Talk to that girl in marketing.
Yeah. When I noticed that when I had my bottle last month, I looked at that and I'm like, wait a minute. And even some of the like tasting notes on the back of it were a little different than this year. And I'm like, did they just reuse the same label from last year? So had a little excess.
That would have been a lot easier.
So much
All right,
easier.
so we did. So this is batch 002. Batch 001 was the 10th anniversary bottle, correct?
Yes.
So
and it also had a 6-year age statement on it.
6-year.
Yep. But it was a different blend of barrels.
Okay.
And so this one has a different, I'd think you'll think it's a different flavor profile
Okay.
than
I'm
what we had
excited about
last year.
this.
But I mean,
Well, and last year's 10th anniversary bottle was one of the highest rated bottles we've had on the podcast. I gave that a 9.7. Steve gave it a 10. So it was one of our favorites from last year.
Man.
So
I don't just hand out 10s. I'm just saying that right now.
okay.
and I chickened out from giving it a 10 and gave it a 9.7.
That's why you go first.
Hopefully we live up to expectations.
All right. So you were getting excited about saying something about this batch? No? Before Nate
Well,
said
I was
something.
going to say, you know, whenever you're blending a small batch special release bourbon, depending on which barrels you select for it, you can have completely different flavor profiles. Which
Absolutely.
ones you incorporate. So
Are there similarities, though, between batch 1 and 2 here? I mean, when you're doing that, is it the same?
oh yeah,
Everything else
so
is
it's,
the same.
It's bourbon that was
Right.
100% distilled, aged, and bottled at Watershed Distillery by Watershed Distillery.
Yes.
It was finished for at least 2 years
Okay.
in our apple brandy casks,
Okay.
which are a mix of char 2 and char 4.
Okay.
And that's it.
That's it.
Same
That's
mash bill.
But you know, we've had the single barrels on here,
We
King
have.
Chambers,
We have.
Sugar and Spice. And so tasting through the different single barrels, you can see there's so much variation
Oh,
from barrel to
100%,
barrel.
yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right.
Hmm.
Let's take a sip. Aaron, do you have a bottle of this with you?
I don't, but I can taste it already.
I feel like you might know a little bit. So when you were dealing with this project, what was the idea here behind this one versus the first batch? Because obviously you said it's going to be different, right? So you're not looking. I have not sipped this yet. I've not had this yet. This is going to be my first. But do you look for consistency on this, or do you treat it like a single barrel project where you want differences in batch 1 to 2, and if there's a third, you want it to be different every time? Is that where are you guys at on that kind of thought process?
We want it to be in the same realm, but you're not going to get the same flavor profile. There's just no way,
100%.
especially with this mash bill and the limited quantity that was left over remaining. So I mean, this will never be released again. This is it. I mean, this is everything
Right.
after this is all the three grain bill. So this is it.
And for everyone, what is do you guys disclose the mash bill for everyone?
So
For the
what
bourbon.
Aaron's referring to is the
let's-
old 5-grain mash bill.
Let's bring this back to
Yeah.
like the basics for the people that are tuning in for possibly the first time tonight that don't know anything about Watershed, don't know anything about
Mhm.
you guys and some of the products, you know, how you got to the 10 years and everything like that. But that's what I'm saying. Do you guys
Yeah.
disclose it for everyone on what the mash bill is or how this comes to be?
We do. So our original mash bill when we first started was kind of in the world of bourbon, sort of non-traditional. So it was corn, wheat, rye, barley, and spelt. And so that's an ancient Ohio grain.
Yeah.
So you have, you know, almost like a nuttiness. It's got a lot of warmth to it, but it's a pretty unique bourbon flavor profile.
Okay.
Today we're a high rye mash bill. So, you know, more traditional, but I mean, bourbon is so much more than a mash bill.
I understand
It's
that.
cook
Yeah.
temps. It's the type of still that you're using. It's the barrels you're using. I'm
So go break that down a little bit for everyone.
well, that would actually, I'm going to kick that one over to Aaron because
yeah.
he's the guy who actually makes it. I just get to taste it afterwards.
I don't know. I think you were spitting out some pretty good vocabulary there, so you're on the right path. No, so my biggest issue with the spelt is Anne hit the nail on the head. You've got a nuttiness factor. Well, we're also carrying a little bit of that nuttiness from our malt. So in my eyes, they're canceling each other out. And in any bourbon profile you want your flavor grain to shine through. My issues with the 5-grain bill is no one knew what they were going to do. There wasn't a leader of the pack. So as you look at your between the grains, between the flavors, because it's kind of like, oh, let's just see what we get. We are much more concise in what flavor profile we're going to go after now with the 72-21-7 mash bill. So 21% rye. So it's not the highest mash bill we could get, but with that high amount of corn, that's the best yield we're going to get with that rye coming through.
Wow.
And just a little
Go ahead.
backstory, the spelt actually was, because we were opened not with this massive investment like a lot of bourbon companies are today, but it was two guys opening a distillery, which is today the largest distillery in Ohio. And it was very much a nod to the agricultural heritage of where we're from and of Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
So, they wanted to, in a lot of ways, they did things very differently. Today, almost nobody opens with their own distillate in bourbon.
Okay.
Mm.
And we were 100% distilled, aged, and bottled from the start.
Yeah.
So nobody does that today.
Yeah, we've talked about that in the past when we
Yeah.
had you on. You guys made your bourbon,
Mhm.
but then in order to keep the lights on and get some money, you guys were doing vodkas, gins. You guys have the best-selling gin in Ohio.
Yeah.
And that's
Mhm.
not made in Ohio, as in the best-selling gin.
Well, no, I mean,
Or is it the best-selling
Tanqueray
Ohio?
sells more.
Okay.
It is the best-selling Ohio-made gin.
There we
But even at that,
Award-winning, right?
so we actually won one of the Ascot Awards and made it to like the best of. Our 4-peel gin is, I like to say, gin for people who don't know they like gin yet. So it's very bright, citrus forward, approachable.
Mhm.
But it is in the premium gin category. You've got Tanqueray and Bombay Sapphire and Hendrix, and then you have 4-peel gin in Ohio. I mean, it's huge.
It's pretty good
huge.
company.
Huge. Yeah.
And I will say, I mean, so when it comes to the great bourbons, obviously this is more of a bourbon related podcast.
Yeah.
But when I say that I have Watershed on, I mean, the bourbon side of it, you guys are making major waves. But that 4-peel gin, when I say I have Watershed, to people that aren't even maybe like bourbon drinkers or they like are dabbling in, they're like, oh, I love their gin.
Yeah.
Like I hear that all the time, which is fabulous because again,
really
it I think everything goes hand in hand. Obviously, what boosts other things, and if you like one thing from a distillery, you're going to go to others.
Mhm.
But Aaron, when you're doing all of this, right? So like, what did you have in mind for you two? Like when we were talking about, you guys were tasting different batches, different samples of what you wanted to do with batch 002
Mm-hmm.
with another friend of the show, but I'm not going to name his name because he doesn't deserve it.
Uh-oh. Do you remember that day? So we always, before any time we're blending something, we always start out and taste through all of the barrels and make notes. And we'll taste separately
How
and
many?
make our own notes. This particular
How
one,
many barrels?
I think we pulled maybe 21 barrels. Or
That's a
so.
good amount.
It was an interesting day. I mean, they're small
Yeah,
sips.
yeah.
You're not tasting, not like a whole pour,
No.
basically. And it was fun how aligned we all were, even not discussing all the way through. And we started with different ones and so kind of going through aligned in terms of the flavor profiles of the different barrels.
Mhm.
And then we start blending, and that is a fun day because I'll sit there and go through all the notes and basically blend up. I think we had 5 different blends that we were evaluating. So I would bring them over to Aaron and mix them up, and they were like A, B, C. And I threw in, what was it, an Elijah Craig toasted barrel just to mess with them.
That's productive.
Oh yeah. And I'll throw in like, one of the samples twice and say, give me your ranked order, your tasting notes and ranked order opinion. And the one that I threw in twice, he actually said, I can't tell the difference between these two, but they're
There you
both
go.
So he's
my
pretty good at
favorite.
his job.
Oh, he's really good. And then he's like, so they tie for first, and then the next one would be this one. And I don't know what you did with that, but that's not right.
So that was the
It pissed me off because I wanted to know how we could do it again. I was like, I don't know where it happened, where it came from, but we got to figure out what that is.
day. Yeah.
So 21 barrels. That's a lot of possible combinations.
Well, you don't necessarily incorporate every single one. You might taste one barrel and
But I mean, you said you were sampling from 21 different barrels. Like, how do you figure out what barrels to blend together?
so different, we're talking about single barrels, right?
yes.
And they have, some people are really good at tasting notes. Actually, Aaron is really, really good at putting words to tasting notes. And I'm like, I think about bourbon in terms of colors and musical notes. And, that's, like this one has the deep tones and this one kind of plays up here and it's sort of flowery. And this one is like straight through the middle and there's really not a lot of body to it. And, all that kind of stuff. So it's sort of building a symphony with the different. So you don't pick all ones with the same flavor profile, but you really have to try it to see if it's going to work
a recipe,
together.
Right? It's like you put little parts of it. So how many are in this?
This one, I think this was 16 barrels.
I was going to say 15 or 16.
Yeah,
so 15 or 16 barrels.
Mm-hmm.
And is it equal parts or do you do different parts on that? How does that work for people?
So different people blend differently. We, for this one, use the entire barrel, but they were different ages. So they ranged from just 6 years old to just under 8 years old, 7.75.
7.75.
Yes. I had to calculate. I mean, you track everything to the day. Yeah. And so, but the yield on the barrels is going to be different. So
because
even
of the age typically.
Right. Yeah. So even when you're going through and you're making your blend, you're not totally sure. There will be some variation. And I think in this case, I liked the final product even better than the blend that we did. I mean, it's similar, but it was even better.
So when you're talking about that, this is the final product versus the blend. The blend is kind of where you guys were at before you said this is it.
Well, the blend is like when you have equal parts from each barrel.
Okay.
And then like once you actually marry them
because
together.
Of the different yields in each of them, it's not quite equal parts.
Right.
Math.
Right.
Got it. Nice.
You can jump in and correct me if you want, Aaron.
No, you're killing it. The one thing we do run into every so often, we can say we have the blend in concrete every time, but then we run it through our system and then get it through our bottling line, and we have incredible strict controls, engineering controls, and CIPs that we do on every part of our line, but somehow with that aeration or something is with it just moving, breaking down even more compounds. And like Anne was saying, sometimes that finished bottle is just like, holy shit, we made that? All right.
Still surprises you.
Like, I like this even better. So,
and that's the good holy shit. It's not the bad holy shit that like, wow, this isn't where we were at.
Luckily, the bad holy shit doesn't happen very often.
That's good.
We don't let it get that far.
Yeah.
And how many bottles have we gone over? I think we talked about it prior to the show, but how many bottles did this come out completely? How many did you release to the public?
3,066. And that's not just in Ohio. That's across all markets. Okay. So different allocations went to Georgia and Michigan. And
how many markets are you at right now?
I think we're in 7 or 8 now. Yeah.
When we say markets, that is states, correct?
Yeah. Okay. So it would be like Illinois and Chicago gets an allocation, New York.
Yeah, absolutely. But this one was mainly you guys did in Ohio, at least at the distillery. You guys launched this on a Saturday, I believe.
Yes.
Not too long ago.
Yep.
And how many of the bottles went to that versus then out to, do you know how many you gave away that or sold that day?
That particular day, I could pull the data, but I can tell you that last year we sold out in under 3 hours and there were traffic jams and it was an interesting day. And so this year we actually increased the allocation that we released at the distillery. So we have more. So we actually have a few bottles left.
So you still have
at the distillery
bottle shop.
Because it's not meant to be a frenzy. It's meant to be enjoyed. And so, we're really ready for it. And that's it. And then we have some going out to stores as well.
I like that versus the... Mm-hmm. I feel like what's become a lot of this industry with this anymore is lines and
no lines.
Yeah.
Well, there were lines, but they moved so fast. But not
like obsessively long lines that everyone has to camp out. Like we were down in Louisville not so long ago. We went to Old Forester and the tour guide was talking about, for the birthday bourbon and how people camp out like days in advance to get this ticket to come back and buy it. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I just don't. Like, I don't know who does. I can't believe there's still lines outside of like Apple stores when an iPhone gets released. That happened again this year.
That makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
I would say we're kind of like a family over there because even though we are the largest Ohio distillery, we are still very much a small business basically. And so Aaron was there that day, and he was out signing bottles. I believe he gave his business card to everyone in line and said, "Go ahead, tell me what your tasting notes are. I want to hear from you." I'm like, oh boy. So did you get any crazy, how'd that go, Aaron?
That did not backfire in my face as well as I thought it was going to, as well as you thought it might. I think I got more, I don't know. I think I might have got 2 guys reach out to me on Instagram. That was it. No text, nothing like that. So it was actually kind of pleasant. So it's fine. But I wanted that communication to happen. So it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So you wanted it, but it didn't happen as much as you thought it would?
Not really. I was hoping we get, quite a bit of engagement, traffic, and just, creating positive vibes and positive buzz for us.
Yeah. Do you ever reach out? Have you put any posts out there since then to see what people are drinking this? Are they enjoying it? Do you guys follow?
We've actually seen, and we've commented on several people's reviews, and people are reviewing it and knocking their reviews are out of the park. They're great. They're exactly what we hoped they'd be.
Well, it's definitely got a little bit of a spice to it, that's for sure, which is nice.
It does. I think this one, it drinks like, remember Dusty Bird, the one single barrel? It drinks like an old Kentucky bourbon. This does not taste like non-Kentucky craft distillery.
No.
Tons of character.
You just kind of tied it into something that reminds me of a little bit.
Which is?
Well, with that spice and that kind of depth and just the warmth of it is
like the bottle you find at your grandparents' house because they have a liquor cabinet, but they really don't drink. And you're like, oh, like back before bourbon was waiting in lines like it is today.
Waiting in lines, trying to be, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but I mean, this is like to kind of add to that point. It's like you're not trying to get cute with it and try to come out with these new flavors or these new things to set yourself apart, which I do think is interesting. The fact that this does have that apple brandy cask finish, because I mean, I'm searching for it, and as it's lingering, I lit up my cigar, but I actually wanted to focus a little bit more on the glass here in the bottle, and is that as it lingers, there's just this, maybe I'm searching for it, but it's not like an apple flavor, but there's a little,
it's bright.
It's bright
There's
finish,
this,
like a little, like almost hint of sweetness to it at the end.
Yeah, actually,
at the very, very end.
Aaron, you usually compare it to like not like an apple jack. It's more like an apple peel a little bit, but it's subtle.
It's very,
Think of a really, really red apple that you've been, getting all of the peel, and that aftertaste, I think, just kind of settles in there with that on the palate.
Yeah.
But our apple brandy it drinks more like a whiskey made from fruit. It's not sweet. It's not like the sugar doesn't survive the distillation.
Can you do that? Whiskey made from fruit?
I mean, think about cognac.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a specialized type of brandy.
Nice.
With grapes from these certain specific regions, aged in certain type of wood, right in this one place. I mean, it's just a specific type of brandy. So unappreciated. We seriously should do like cognac and BS one night, and we should just introduce the world.
I'm down.
I've got a bottle of the apple brandy at home.
And are you guys seeing like in bourbon, people are skipping over cognac and going to Armagnac?
I have not.
And I'm like, you missed a whole neighborhood.
All right, we need to have you back on to do the cognac night.
First ever.
We've done rum night before. We've done tequila, right?
Yeah, we did it we did Cabo Wabo on Cinco de Mayo.
That's right.
We had a mezcal.
Oh yeah. Kind of runs together at episode 190.
Yeah.
Aaron, what other projects are you working on, or is this kind of like what I know you guys already have this out? I mean, are you already focusing on number 003, or what is going on in your world exactly as the head distiller of Watershed Distillery?
We are currently right now, we are trying to wrap up as much as we can for the year. And as far as our budgets are concerned, and as many cases as we were supposed to put away, as many barrels as we were supposed to fill. We're wrapping a lot of that up, but we're also trying to get out as many purchase orders as we can to start next year as well. So like we're already planning for our next apple brandy run right now. So we're trying to get all our ducks in a row for that. That's going to hit hard. We're probably going to do one more big old fashioned run before probably within the next month. As far as releases go, we have our I believe our Nochino finished bourbon that's going to come out.
Yes.
And then we will have our Nochino Fest, and then a very unique product will be coming out, Burchino, which is our Nochino recipe.
What was that?
Wait, you heard it here because the press release isn't even out. So like world exclusive breaking news.
It kind of happens sometimes on this.
Burchino, Bourcino, Burchino. So that
you know our Nochino.
We know the Nochino, yes.
Yes.
So how is Burchino made?
I don't know.
Our base spirit is 4-year bourbon in that.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
So with our Nochino, the base spirit is our vodka in that. So we're talking, 300 gallons of vodka versus now we've got close to 300 gallons of 4-year bourbon that we've put X amount of walnuts in and aged for several months. And we'll crack those up in the next month and see how well we did there.
So
this is an experiment.
Big experiment.
All right.
I mean, how could it go wrong? Because Nochino, which we start with vodka and walnuts and
yes.
Cloves and cinnamon, vanilla, and all those great things,
yes,
and then we age it in a bourbon barrel, and then we had this great idea: what if we just made it with bourbon?
All right,
like, wouldn't that be great?
I'm in.
Has this process has started or no?
Oh yeah,
it's happening.
Yeah. It is steeping as we speak.
Yes.
Nice.
Excited? Are you guys a little anxious? Are we? What? For those of us who don't get to do this every day, what do you wake up thinking? Like first of all, how long is this process at this point?
It'll be close to 6 months, not quite 6 months.
Yeah.
6 months on an experiment, which understandably so, like in the bourbon world, when you're aging things for as many years as you do it,
right.
It's always a long-term experiment that you hope turns out with the shit in a good way, like we talked about earlier.
Right.
But where are you at on this now? Are you going in? Do you sample it along those 6 months? I mean, do you see where it's progressing, or is this just do not open till Christmas?
This is a let it do its thing, let it be. Everything should do its job. We've already got so much flavor from that bourbon that's in there. Then you tack on, the vanilla bean, everything else we tack in there. It's just it should be delicious. I'm sure everyone on site is going to want to be a part of that tasting panel when we pull the cap off that vessel. But at this point, we have enough going on that that product will have its day in the sun, and when it's time, and we'll have a hell of a time trying it out.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. Letting the cat out of the bag a little bit.
Road trip
to Columbus.
Road trip.
Cool.
20 minutes.
Road trip.
to the distillery.
Yeah, that's an Uber ride, bud. That's perfect.
December, what is it, 4th? Maybe. Whatever that first Saturday in December is. Yeah. I mean, relatively.
Do not open until Christmas.
Burchino.
Burchino. That's exciting. So Nate, let's hear it. What do you think of this?
So I got to actually try this last month.
That's right.
The night before it was released, I was able to get one of the media bottles that Anne held for us. I also bought my own bottle as well. So thank you, Anne, for letting me do that. And then I actually did an Instagram live video that night, uncorking this and actually trying it for the first time. And I'm glad to see that it tastes just like I remembered. I had to go back and remind myself what it was like last month when I had it. I really enjoy the nose. On the nose, I get some of that apple brandy barrel, definitely. nice brown sugar, but just a little bit of spice on the nose. But again, 120.8 proof, that should be expected. What really stood out to me on this one was the complexity of the finish. Because when I was doing that video, I took my first sip, and then right when I started to talk about the tasting notes that I got, all of a sudden that finish kind of creeped up on me. So like I thought it was done, and then as I started to talk, it came back up, and just the flavor, not heat, but just the flavor and everything else. So I was like, oh, I got to start with the finish on this one. Before I even started talking about what I tasted, I actually started talking about how the finish was on this, because it's got a nice long finish, very oily, so it just kind of hangs around in your palate. What really surprised me on it was I don't get a whole lot note or of oak, but I do get some nice dark fruits, and one of the ones that really kind of stood out to me a little bit was this black cherry note that I was getting when I was sampling it that first night. And I probably had 2 or 3 glasses of it that night, and that they weren't huge pours.
Okay.
No one's judging. No one's
Plus
judging.
I was at home. It's not like I was going anywhere. It's kind of like Steve here. Like
All
he
right.
can pour out however heavy he wants.
About ready for a second.
But no, when I did that video, one of the comments I had made was this is one that you almost have to be careful with because it's got such a nice flavor to it, and even being at 120 proof, it goes down pretty smooth. And so this is one that you could just keep pouring, and before you know it, at 120 proof, like, oh, good thing I'm home, I'm ready for bed.
Yeah. You start with a pour and you end with a nightcap on the same bottle.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had to restrain myself from getting too far down into that bottle.
I understand.
But it was absolutely delicious. Like I said, even at 120 proof, I didn't get a whole lot of burn. It was just a lot going on with it. Different flavors on the nose, the palate, the finish. So that's why I said it was a complex whiskey. It just kept changing with every stage.
We had a comment from James Young on the feed here. It says, throw a splash of water in there, Steve. Do you guys recommend that? Or do you, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I see him shaking his head.
I don't think it needs it myself.
I don't either. But I mean, I wonder if it would bring something
But
out.
I would welcome it. Try it.
Here.
I think Nate, you hit it on the head. It's just got so much going for it, and it goes down smooth. I don't know. It's got what I would want in it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I really like in some bourbons or whiskeys, I like ones that have a nice thick viscosity to it. I like something that kind of coats your palate and hangs around. So that's one of the reasons why for most whiskeys that I drink, I don't add any water to it, because that's going to thin it out a little bit, and it's not going to hang around your palate. Yeah. Some people do it to take away the burn, but that's what that first sip is supposed to do. That first sip is supposed to numb all those pain receptors in your mouth. So that way every sip after that, all you're tasting is the flavor.
So James said, I put it up there, for me, it opened up the flavor. So I'm interested to see what happens. I poured a little bit more in the glass. I want to have a couple more sips as it is, but I will, as I get down, maybe do a drop of water on there. So it's interesting. Open up the flavor. I mean, I think a lot of times people do that to lighten it up in a sense. Mm-hmm. This one, I think, as it stands, it has a lot of what you're talking about, Nate. Obviously, I agree. That was a great description.
Thank you.
The one thing I want to kind of reiterate and really push is that it hurries to the finish. Like, it's really an interesting drink dynamic, is that I feel like as soon as it hits your tongue, your palate, you taste one thing. And sometimes I think that there are bottles that will do that, and then there's a good 5 to whatever seconds after this. This is a lot quicker than that. As soon as I swallow, all of a sudden it starts building this new finish, and it's just like this 1-2 punch. I don't know if you get that at all, Aaron. I mean, you're saying.
Well, now that you describe it,
you know what I'm saying? Not everything does that. It's like when you take that sip, it's like you kind of like, oh, okay, that's nice, and then you kind of wait for it to get down in your chest a little bit. But this one, it's kind of like it it immediately just kicks it into a different gear, and all of a sudden you get a bunch of different things going on. When I say it hurries up to the finish, I don't get that a lot. That's what's so unique about this. Whatever this 15 or 16 barrels you guys did, this is really kind of cool.
Yeah, well, Nate touched on that viscosity. So that I think that first few sips are going to give you that oil in your mouth, that oily mouth feel. That's going to coat really well. And then as you keep going through and as you give it some time, I think it's going to open up on your palate really well. And I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, that must be it. Because I mean, it does. It really does. I had a quick question here from Jonathan Herring, who's been on the show before. He's now down in Texas. He's with Forge Cigars. He says, "Are you guys in Texas or Louisiana?"
Not yet.
Not yet. Sorry, Jonathan.
But we do have we have a person who ships like out in Michigan.
Okay.
So it should be hitting Michigan. It's Ohio exclusive always when it first comes out.
Yes.
And then it should be hitting Michigan in the next maybe 3 weeks.
This particular.
This batch.
But even
yes.
Jonathan, I mean, what about the other Watershed products?
No, none
Same
of them.
thing?
Yeah.
Michigan, like they can order it online?
Yes.
So it'll be shipped through that distributor?
Yeah. I think they use Shopify or something.
Can you say who it is or no?
Woods Wholesale, I
Woods
know, and then
Wholesale.
Beverage Warehouse. There's several up in Michigan that
Okay.
that actually will post things and do.
So maybe if you're not in one of the markets for Watershed products, and you may not be lucky enough to obviously snag this limited product, but if you wanted to get, like we also have on here on the table here is the 4-year blended, correct?
No, it's the bottle and bond.
Oh, that's the bottle and bond. I didn't see
Yeah.
it.
It's
Hey.
that darker label.
Nice.
Thanks to Jody Jacks. Thank you for
You
the
brought
bottle.
us that. Well, thank you.
What's that? Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so you can check that out if you guys do a search or whatever, or also just if you're in Texas like Jonathan, you're in another market, just reach out to the folks at Watershed through their Contact Us, and they will point you in the right direction. I mean, absolutely, they want to share these great products, obviously, to you guys. So it's again having that family feel, having that thing where it's like they wish they could be closer to you or have it out to you, but if you want to try their products, they're going to help you out. I mean, that's just what's so great about it.
Mm-hmm.
Love having you guys on. Anne, what do you think about this? You kind of talked about it, but what's your review of this bottle?
Oh, I love this batch.
Okay.
I mean, no. I actually really like this one. I think it's totally different. Is that really loud?
I think it's just moving papers around.
Oh, I'm like, Aaron, you're loud.
I just muted him.
We muted you. No, I love this batch because of that dusty characteristic that it
Yes.
has. But I mean, it's fun to work in a distillery and you're selecting barrels for different things because you'll get to create different products that have completely different flavor profiles.
You guys are doing
Different
a lot of
occasions.
that right now.
Yeah.
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 She's being modest.
We do. No, I mean, so we have our 90 proof bourbon,
Yes.
which is easy sipping, super approachable. We have our bottled and bond.
Yes.
We have a single barrel program that is, allocated. So that kind of opens up
And that's
whatever.
growing that program.
It is. We just finished our last single barrel selection for the year
Okay.
for bourbon. And then that will open up again early next year. And and then we have a couple of allocated releases. We have this one and then the bourbon that is finished in Chino barrels and then bottled at barrel strength is coming out. That'll be like kind of mid-December.
Okay.
And that is now 5-year age stated.
Wow.
New age statement on
Like I
this
said,
one.
you're busy.
You can tell that we love age statements.
Well, and you should. I mean,
We
again, I
do.
think this is part of the evolution of
It's
your guys'
authenticity.
Authenticity, which
Yeah.
is part 2. Look at that coming in.
Are you putting those age statements on now because there seems to be a demand for it in the market? Or are you guys just doing it because, hey, we just want to let people know what it is? Because there are some bourbon drinkers out there that they want to see that age statement.
Mhm.
And
I'm one of them.
so you're doing it for you.
No, I mean, different products, they have different things. And you can have a young bourbon that does taste good. But then at least me, I find myself asking, but what could this be? Where could this go?
Gotcha.
And you can also have things and I will not name the line of products, but I've also had things that are, in the high teens, and it's maybe not what we're all thinking, but it shows you that more age is not necessarily equivalent to a great flavor profile either. There's kind of a sweet spot.
Yeah. You have to find that with all your products. Like, hey, at 6 years, this tastes really good.
Right.
9 years, no, it loses
Might be
something.
Great.
It could be great. Could be,
but maybe at 21 years, it's really terrible, or 25 years, and there's hardly any left.
To finish it, though, right? I mean, that's part of the process. I always go back to when I first started getting into whiskey. I think, like not now, but this is before the bourbon, craze. There were a lot of people like myself that, Scotch was what you started dabbling with. Again, getting into cigars. Scotch was kind of the thing going back now, probably, 15, 20 years ago. And I still remember my early was like, I really enjoyed Glenfiddich 15. And, at the time it was like, all right, this is a $45 bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 18 was already like $70 or $80 at the time. I know they've gone up since then.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things I loved the 15. I didn't like the 12.
Mm-hmm.
And the 18 was okay. And so I kept gravitating back towards the 15. And as you go into it a little bit further, there were different aging processes of like what they were doing with the barrel. And there was like things, because I think when people are getting into it, the age statement is something I think a lot of enthusiasts enjoy, like yourself. But it's also something that can be deceiving to some people because they might think you guys are what I like about it is just right here on the bottle, it says finished in apple brandy barrel. Again, I think that has been a new transition. And Aaron, I don't know if you agree or not, but for a while there, no one wanted to do that. They wanted to be basically just, this is pure Kentucky bourbon. Now it's bourbon made elsewhere, it's just, and now there's been this trend of finishing in different types of barrels. And I think that's something that there has been a little bit of a lag on some purists, like just any industry will have, cigars were the same way, but with that, they're like, oh, you're finishing other things. That's not real bourbon. You know what I mean? But now it's getting to the point where as soon as you try it, there's these, even with this finishing the apple brandy, it's got this really traditional flavor, but you're doing all these things. But do you think that if you did something like this, put more age on it, you guys are doing, you said 4 years to 7.5?
So it's 4 years old, but the total age,
there's barrels that were older though.
Yes. So the total age of the spirit from the day that it first went into a barrel until the day that it was harvested for this product was from 6 years old. And we had ones that were 6 all the way up to 7. Just under 8.
Yes.
7.75.
7.7.
And so that number includes, you said,
both barrels.
2-year finish in the apple brandy barrels. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Or even more.
Yeah. And to touch back on the age statements, it's so much easier to leave it off. And I have so much more great respect for companies that can hold on to the age statement and actually pull it off, whether if that means limiting, just putting things on allocation or limiting a release. So, I'm always excited to see that age statement. I know how hard it takes to keep that and to do it year after year. So I'm going to gravitate to that every time.
Well, I mean, we actually saw during the beginning of this bourbon boom that we're in, one of the big bottles out there, they used to be age stated, and then they took that age statement off.
Yeah.
A lot of them did.
In order to keep up with the demand of the product.
Mm-hmm.
So is that like a goal for you guys that you want to keep it on there the best you can?
I think that should be the ultimate, goal. You do it once, you want to save face and make sure you can do it over and over again and not have to spend all the money to redesign all the labels and do all that other good stuff. So you got to kind of commit to it if you're going to switch gears like that.
It was a big commitment to go to that.
Sean, what do you think of this?
The bourbon?
Do you want to get on the mic, Sean?
Jody, you had it as well?
Mm-hmm. Oh, she is.
Yeah.
Got a cigar too.
Yeah.
So I liked it definitely on the nose. It was extremely sweet, and I did get some apple and stuff, and then you felt the burn pretty quick, and then but it still tasted good. I mean, you just got to kind of adjust to that burn. If you're not, I was like expecting something different, just because the way I smelled it, and was like, oh, and then it was like, boom, there's that little kick, which is great. And then it just became more enjoyable. And I did try to dab a little bit of water in. And
what did you think? Because I'm sipping on that now.
So it took away the burn quite a bit, and I think it just accentuated or it brought more sweetness to it.
Yeah, so it's a slower transition too.
Yeah.
I'm noticing based on what we were like you said, kind of like that. You said burn. Mine was kind of like it hurries to the finish a little bit. Now that I'm sipping on this with a little bit of water, it is this like a lot more of a mellow transition.
Yeah.
It kind of just it takes its time. Takes its time a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah. Jody, how about you? What'd you think of this? Putting her on the spot because it's first time on. This is Jody Jack. She's been a member of the community page for quite some time. Long time listener, first time caller. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. So the more that I'm drinking and the more it's opening up, the more flavors that I'm getting out of it. I like the burn, but I think an ice cube in it would actually help to open it up a little bit. Maybe what Steve is saying, it takes away that immediate finish, maybe a little bit smoother. What is the rye content in it?
21.
For the no, that's our new one.
That's the new one.
Yeah.
I'll let the experts. I just work.
Go ahead. The old mash bill percentages.
This is still the 5.
I have it on my
grain.
computer, like
I just-
on a
I-
How
post-it
about
now.
Aaron? Do you know? No.
So when they were, neither of us were actually at Watershed when that was being made.
Yeah.
21, give or take.
Way less.
100.
The reason I was asking is the more that I drink it, the more I can actually taste the rye coming out of it. Some of the vanilla notes, the brown sugar, things like that. But
Yeah.
I really like it. I think it's fantastic. But I'd like to try it with an ice cube and see what it does.
I have ice. If you want to get an ice cube. Yeah, there you go.
If I had to take a guess, I'd say it's between 10 and 12% of rye, wheat, and spelt, somewhere in that range.
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, how long have you been at Watershed now?
March 1st this year.
Okay.
So we're closing in on 6.
So obviously Watershed's not one of those companies that's been around for decades and decades, because I think like when we hear distilleries get a new head distiller, master distiller, whatever it is,
Head distiller. I was corrected.
for him,
yeah.
yes.
No, it's head distiller.
To
be clear.
But no, like when you talk about some of these distilleries that have been around, for 100 years, obviously when a new person comes in, they're not gonna change things a great deal, because there's a reason why that company's been in business for 100 years and they keep making a consistent product over and over. So with Watershed being now 11 years old, it's still a young distillery. So Aaron, when you're coming into Watershed, going into their 11th year, like how much are you keeping with what they have done, and how much are you actually changing and bringing in what you want to do and putting your own personality onto the product?
Great question.
So if everything in our bourbon portfolio was perfect, I wouldn't have a job and it would be easy to manage. It wasn't quite where it should be, especially at the level we're playing at right now. So I think from the start, ownership placed the ball in my court, in my hands. So I have revamped the entire bourbon production process from the ground up. As far as white spirits go, I haven't really touched that other than increasing yields just by the little things. But I think, so I started March 1st, March 24th or 25th, I changed the recipe completely and we started producing differently, and our yield immediately grew 25%, something like that. So it was great.
Is that when you went to the 3 grain?
No, that was about 5 years ago, I think.
Oh, okay.
So what did you change? Or is that the new products we're seeing, the 4-year blended?
Oh,
I'm a
the old match bill.
Yeah.
Explain this.
We're talking about what's coming off the still. Tell us the magic.
What's coming up now?
Yeah, so I'm a pump and valve guy. I'm a nerd behind the scenes of what's going on, and that's kind of my bread and butter that I've been able to adapt to and find a niche in for my own reputation. So you've basically got to make sure, step one, you're clean, you're putting in great products, you're looking after the same chemistry on every step of the way. There's a lot of things that weren't being tracked. There was a lot of things that were being done that weren't needed. There was a lot of things that were taking longer than they should to do. And I sped a lot of things up, and, speeding things up, cleaning things up, throwing things out that don't need to be there. I think that just took some experience and someone who failed. I failed as many times as I've succeeded. So, it's not hard to walk in if you know what you're looking for, to say, you don't need that. We're not doing that. No, why? So that's what we did.
What you're talking about there.
A quick example would be we were letting our fermenters or our mashes cool overnight in our fermenters before pitching yeast. So we would be losing an entire 12 to 15 hours of production time trying to get our mash to a specific temperature that wouldn't burn our yeast up or kill it. I said, well, why can't we cool it down in the cooker? Use our cooling water to cool it there and then pump it over. It may have added a few more hours into the day, but the result was immediate. There was an immediate change. Chemistries were better, and the overall product that came out of the still was better. So.
And where did you come from as far as before Watershed?
My immediate move came from Lux Row Distillers, where I helped Luxco build that distillery.
Okay.
So we were there approximately 3.5 years. And then prior to that, I worked at Barton 1792 for about 3 years as a distillery supervisor in there.
Okay.
So when you come in and you want to start changing some of these things, like how does that conversation go with the people above you? Because we've had Greg on before. He's one of the founders of Watershed.
Yes.
Does he just sit there and be like, hey, you just tell me what you want to do? Or do you actually have to kind of convince the people above you what needs to be done and why? Like how much free reign do they let you have, and how much stuff do you actually have to get approved in order to do?
So, no, that was one of the big draws for me to come all the way here and move my family here was I was going to be given the keys. So figure it out, make it better. It's yours. I trust you to do it. And that was, for me in my career, that was huge for a president, an owner, let alone a founder of a company come up and say, I respect you. I know what you're doing. I know you know what you're doing. Do it. Okay. So that's what we're doing still.
Yeah, you're in the process. A lot of exciting things definitely coming. Sounds like.
Oh, we're thrilled. I mean,
I'm sure you are.
If you tasted the distillate coming off the still right now, and Aaron has actually started. So we were originally, we used a pot still and then moved over to a column still. And Aaron is now going back to using both stills to create bourbon. So
Really?
3.5 years from now, we're going to have pot still bourbon. We're going to have column still bourbon and lots of exciting things. It's been amazing. I know you've been playing with some different grains. You've been playing with some different barrels coming in. There's lots of fun stuff coming.
No, it's very exciting. And,
Yeah.
and you guys have been on a very accelerated path in the last several weeks, well, 10 plus years. But I mean, especially recently, I feel like it's been very exciting.
But I mean, what we're drinking right now was created before either of us worked there.
Right.
And so this is, that's the fun thing about bourbon is that you're drinking history.
You are. And
Yeah.
you guys, like you mentioned, the fact you were given the keys, that's one of the things I think the thing about Watershed that I've, from my perspective, that I've really gathered from it is that the foundation is so strong with the founders, with everything they wanted to do with this in the middle of Ohio, especially, and I love hearing the story, from Greg when he was on about, they had the idea they're going to do it. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, you guys they didn't have a building yet. And all this stuff is like, well, what do we do with this? And then to see 10 years in a business is now almost 11, right? We're at 11.
Just past 11.
Yeah. So we're at 11 now. That's not that long, especially in an industry such as yours.
Right.
That's not a lot of time, in my opinion.
But in craft distilleries, we're actually one of the older ones.
I understand that. I'm
But
saying
in the whole world,
in your industry, first of all, but in a lot of industries that
we're
when it
toddlers.
well, I'm just saying, like, you know, when now, especially, you know, you're talking about, oh, you know, welcome aboard 6 months ago or whatever. It's like, well, we'll try your products in 3.5 years. That's a long ass time. You know what I mean? Like, good job security for someone that's going in there that, you know, it's like, you know, the things are going well right now.
Yeah.
But it is exciting to see that. I think it's really cool to see in 11 years that you're accelerating so quickly with what you're doing, and the fact that you guys are working for a company that I've heard family oriented. I've heard the fact you've moved your family up to this area for this project and this career opportunity. That's a very bold statement about what Watershed is doing, I think, as a whole. You know, not only with the bourbon, but especially with the bourbon projects that you guys are doing. I think it's really cool, and I think that anyone listening, you might identify a little bit with that. Is that it's not just the bottle, it's not the marketing, it's not. Obviously, you want it to be good juice in there, but I mean, it's also where it's coming from and the people that it's coming from. I think gets glanced over a lot, especially with the craft distilleries, because a lot of the Russells, right? I mean, you have these families that are generations in, and I think that really sells a lot of people on it. And obviously, to buy a second bottle, you have to have good juice. It's just, but you have this history, and you guys are at 11, and you guys both on this show tonight, the stuff we're drinking, you weren't here when it started. So I actually think that it's something very special that maybe I think you guys realize, but maybe the listeners don't necessarily realize what's so special about Watershed in Columbus, Ohio, of all places.
I think what's cool is Anne said, this product, started before them. What went into the barrel was before you guys. Right. What went into the bottle is you guys.
Yes.
Because someone distilled it, put it in a barrel,
right.
but it was up to you guys and Greg and whoever else.
Right.
Like, how do we actually make this a product? We've already distilled it. We got to do something with it. What's the best thing we can do with it? That's where you guys have come in. Even though you guys weren't there when this came off the still, you guys were there to put it in the bottle.
Right.
And what's in the bottle is you guys.
And we actually add some of these barrels every time we do a batch of our new 90 proof bourbon.
Really?
So it is, this is the actual, these are the same barrels that we're choosing from when we do our blended bourbon.
Wow.
So it's 4 to 6 years old. Because we love that flavor profile.
And it's amazing, with the old Watershed product, the new 4-year blend, bottled and bond, the 6-year, the Nocino finished. Like, even though it's all coming from the same place, every single one of those products has been different over time. And I think that's what's really great. This bottle isn't, Watershed 4-year cranked up a notch. This is completely different than just the regular everyday Watershed product.
And that's really what goes back to barrel selection, because you think about, there's other major distilleries who have one single recipe and a whole series of bottles, and it's based on selection of barrels, which ones you're going to select for different blends.
And we've talked about that before. Long time ago on the podcast, where there was one distillery that in their rick house, they had 2 barrels. They came off the still same day. They were barreled the same day. They were put in the rick house side by side, aged the same amount of time, but one barrel tasted like one product. The other barrel tasted like another product. And so even though it was the same juice that went into it, different labels ended up on them.
That story was basically, they thought it was this barrel is this and this barrel is this. And you can imagine it's like, obviously it's not that simple with the bottling process, but I was like, they had a sticker in both and they just switched it on the barrels. They're like, no, actually we were wrong here and here. And then that's what we got to go with. I do want to ask before, I don't want to, Aaron, you're going to be, taking off for the second part, I believe, but you have a lot of these projects coming up, and the end of part 1, we're going to talk about the cigar a little bit here. We do a rating on the whiskey, on the cigar, and the pairing. Do you smoke cigars?
I do.
All right, so we got to get some cigars to you. That's one thing. Check. But with that, you know what the whiskey tastes like. So I love asking the head distiller of Watershed this project, this batch 002 out of 10 being the best. What would you rate this for you?
As far as our products,
Just
as far as our products or all products?
Just objectively, anything out there.
Is he rating the children? I think that's what you're asking. Like, you know. Because
I think that pour is a solid 9.
Bottle available right now.
Anything in a bottle available.
What you've had, yes, just
Yep.
in your opinion, out of 10. I'm not going to narrow it down anymore. This is on you. However you rate it, this is your scale.
Because I didn't mash it, I won't give it a 10. But because I did help blend it, I will give it a solid 9.
Okay.
My biggest pro on that pour is that the age brought so much out of. It just proved, the spirit. I don't want to put a pun on it, but the spirit of the founders, the spirit of the company, everything is in that bottle, and it proves that Watershed Distillery was on the right path all along. But it's like we put it in a bottle, and here it is, world. And I wish there was more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm looking at the bottle right now. I wish there was more in that. That's clear. I mean, it is a very good bottle.
Steve, come over to my house. I got my bottle.
You got it. Steak and wine Sunday.
There you go.
We're going to get into the cigar a little bit. Aaron, I don't know if you want to hear about that or if you need to take off. I know you said the kids were going to bed.
I would like to hear about it because in my experience, where I like a nice red wine with some of my cigars sometimes, and I think that little bit of fruit really helps me. It also does a great buzz, but I think that apple brandy finish is going to pair really well, in my opinion.
I think it does. I'm going to actually get a little bit more of that.
Yeah,
actually.
there you go. We did well with this bottle.
And and for those watching that haven't been paying attention, it's not just the 3 of us here that have been drinking this bottle. There's 4 people in the garage that have been drinking this as well.
A little bit. Yeah.
A little bit.
Husband is harassing me online about
how
come you're not having a cigar?
Yeah, I agree.
I know.
I agree. You should be having
like a shy cigar person.
Give her a cigarillo.
So we're smoking tonight the Avo Syncro Caribe, and Caribe stands for, basically it represents the Caribbean. This is something which it's interesting when you read up on this. I do love the marketing behind this. Avo is, and I want to do an Avo episode. I want to see if we can get Dan Burris on here from Davidoff. So I don't want to get into necessarily the background, but this is Avo himself passed away not too long ago, a handful of years back. I think he was like 91 years old.
I can look that up real quick.
So he was a musician that was enthusiastic about cigars. He was very passionate about it, and that's where he teamed up with Davidoff. And so again, I want to dive into that a little bit more as we maybe do an Avo focused podcast show. But the Syncro was something they did a while back. A lot of the Avo stuff was Dominican heavy as far as the blends and everything like that. Avo is known for having this, this very unique hat on. And just, I remember I actually briefly met him and got to see him. You have a picture of him?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was obviously in the later years. Mm-hmm. And always positive things to be heard about Avo. His whole life, especially towards the end. And back in 2000, this was back in probably 16 now, when I went out to Vegas for the trade show, is that, he was still at the trade show at almost 90 years old.
Well, yeah. So
in a wheelchair, just kind of, being pushed around, still in the same, like that picture you had. Mm-hmm. I wish I could throw it up on the screen, but, just all smiles, always shaking hands and just really loving this industry. Even though it wasn't his first industry, obviously.
Yeah.
It was, so on every box that and I took a picture and I'll post it on the community page. If you guys didn't see it, I think I may have earlier today, but it was something that you see these musical notes, like when they do the strength, and it's usually like 5 or so. You'll see this, and I'll pull this up so you can see it, Ann. But you'll see their musical notes is how they do it. And it's very, very.
He was a jazz pianist.
Yeah.
Oh.
So this one though, with the Caribbean theme, a lot of the tobacco is coming from that region, but it's not really ever called the Caribbean region when you're talking about tobacco. It's Dominican Republic, it's Ecuador, it's Nicaragua, Honduras. So this is going to be a Dominican wrapper, Ecuadorian binder, and then Dominican and Nicaraguan filler. And what I want to really, I've been trying, since this is so new, you can only find out so much about it. But they talk about the natural distribution in which the proportions of the tobacco on any of the given plants used are perfectly matched in the blending process. And with those ratios from each of the primings, it's just really interesting that they use that terminology, in my opinion, because when you talk about, I don't know if you Aaron, what you know about that, but they're talking about not only the regions and the tobacco where it's coming from, but they're talking about now primings as well, which is basically where it comes off of the plant, right? So just like it goes back to the farming with the grains that you're choosing, this is the same way with tobacco for the cigars, is that where it comes off the plant, it gives it strength as it goes up higher. They try to make, I think, a very balanced cigar with this one. The marketing behind this is the classic Avo band. If you look at that, it's beautiful. It's got an AV with kind of an O kind of around it. So again, great marketing there. But they use these, is that like a coral teal combination, and it's just very, very beautiful. The box, I'm just gonna pull this up. I was talking here.
Orange.
Well, yeah. So you got the kind of like that blood orange there. But then
Talking the mic.
I feel like
So you got kind of the blood orange, but then the upper part, it's kind of that teal blue and a green, like
silver embellishments. Very nice.
So that's what I was talking about also on the page. For those that are listening live or on the audio, but see how they use even musical notes with him next to it with that hat. So again, a very good thing. So I'll read what's on the box here. This is Natural Harmony Caribbean Soul. The Avo Syncro Caribe is a journey of flavor comprised of, how do you say that? Caribbean or Caribbean?
It depends on the context. It depends on the sentence structure.
Good topic here.
It depends on how
Anne
it's being
says
used.
Caribbean.
Yeah.
Aaron, how about you? Caribbean or Caribbean?
The hot place.
The hot place. That's one way to say it. I agree with that. Also, Nate.
I use both, but it depends on how it's being used in the sentence
I
for
don't
me.
think that's how that works.
If you're on a cruise ship, the let me escape place.
Like you
So
say,
you're going on a cruise.
I'm going on a Caribbean cruise.
Caribbean. When would you use
But
Caribbean then?
Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't say Pirates of the Caribbean.
Nobody
just-
says that.
I feel like that's Disney getting involved
Like
in the way you
I say
talk.
Caribbean rum.
Deep thoughts.
So
That's
you
nice.
said you
Bourbon
met.
and VS.
All right, how about said word and tobaccos? What would you say there?
What?
Caribbean tobaccos or Caribbean tobaccos?
Caribbean. I would.
Caribbean?
And not, basically any.
I would say you could Caribbean
This is where we
tobacco,
just
Caribbean tobacco,
Get off the rails here.
or tobacco from the Caribbean.
No. All right. No, that's an honest
Go
answer.
with that. Yeah.
All right. So back to this. Comprised of Caribbean tobaccos.
And that's a Kentucky answer.
With a touch from Central America, a synchronization of tobaccos from Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, and Ecuador, carefully arranged that provide a subtle sweetness of tropical fruits, aromatic spices, and complex chocolate notes. A blend that represents a natural, harmonious experience that takes you to the land. Sorry, this is a picture of a box here. Takes you to land where the palms sway back and forth to the breeze of the sea.
He can read, but it's hard in that format.
It is hard for me to read, not only in this format,
You
but
gotta
others.
scroll and
But that's the box there, so
zoom.
it is,
That's
again,
beautiful.
yeah, it is beautiful.
Yeah.
Great colors.
So
And my
you
reading
said
skills
you
are weak.
met-
Yeah, go ahead.
You met Avo in
Very in
2016.
In passing.
So if you met him at the trade show in 2016, that'd have been the last trade show he went to.
That's right.
because he passed in 2017,
Yep.
2 days after he turned 91.
Wow.
This guy sounds like the Jimmy Russell of cigars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to
Well,
take away from Jimmy Russell there,
No.
that's the type of generations that are in the tobacco industry as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of patriarchs there, you know, that really push this story further. And so it is kind of cool.
this is also one of those cigars that people will say this different ways because if they don't know enough about
AVO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the gentleman's name was Avo, but some people think it's initials. So they say, "Do you guys carry AVO?" But it's the same thing with CAO cigars. So CAO is the initials of the founder, but some people sit there and go, yeah, you guys have those Cal cigars? I know what you're talking about.
Oh.
I do love the feed here. We had some comments on how to say the word.
Yeah. Ray Cheshire said it depends on which side of the Atlantic you're from.
Yeah. And then, James Young says adjective versus noun makes a difference.
Oh,
That's interesting.
you were onto something.
Yeah, it's not.
There you
Doesn't mean
go.
it's right. It's just two people saying that. But and then Ray said it's one word. Choose how to say it and stick with it. It's not complicated.
There's a couple science majors here, so
Yeah.
don't
True.
ask.
Well, that's how I had to explain
Right.
to someone the difference between affect and effect.
Oh,
One's a noun, one's a verb.
oh, that's
Those are at least two
blasphemy
different
when
words,
people get
but
that
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, but those are spelled differently. All right.
Yeah, it's fine.
Well, since you guys
Deep
aren't
thoughts.
smoking it, Nate, what do you think of this cigar?
So this is the first time I've had it. Have you smoked one, or is this your first?
I did. I was fortunate to smoke a sample. Yeah,
All right, so I got to try the whiskey before you. You got to try the cigar before me.
it's pretty typical.
Yeah. Having that Syncro name attached to it, I was kind of thinking the regular Avo Syncro Nicaragua.
So I think that's what they're doing. Is not only they're expanding on the Avo name, but now Avo, through Davidoff is expanding that Syncro portfolio.
Yeah.
So it's taking it a step away from. So they had a Syncro Nicaragua, they had a Syncro Ritmo, they had a Syncro Caribe. So they're expanding that, and they're kind of paying ode to the different regions. Is what they're doing with that.
So I was kind of pleasantly surprised with this one. This one came across more of a medium body and a very well balanced cigar. Nice earthy flavors to it. Not much spice behind it. But it definitely has more going on with it than, say, the Avo Classic. Avo Classic, a lot of people come in, they're looking for something more on that milder side.
Yeah.
People that like Avo cigars, like this would be the next step up. If they didn't want to try something that was dominant in Nicaraguan tobacco, like this would be the next step. This is that blend of Dominican, Nicaraguan, Ecuadorian tobacco that kind of hits that middle of the palate profile.
Yeah, 3 musical notes according to the rating on the box there.
Okay.
How does this compare? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
How
please.
does this compare to the one last time I was here? You guys had this champagne one
Yeah.
that was like perfume. It was not in a bad way. That sounds
Perdomo?
bad.
No, it was the Perdomo
Yeah.
10th anniversary champagne,
So
which
we actually just had Nick Perdomo himself on the podcast.
I was going to say, husband went out and bought some based on
Really?
strong recommendation. I'm like, if you're going to smoke
Definitely
a cigar,
take that
this
one
is
home to him.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's going to be thrilled. This is great. So,
well, so typically when you're on, because you're not much of a cigar smoker, we tend to pick things a little bit more milder for when
I'm getting
you're
the
on.
maker's mark treatment, right? Like, no, I'm,
Yeah, we'll pick better cigars than that for you.
okay.
But no, so this was one that when Steve and I were in the shop yesterday, we were trying to come up with cigars to do, and I made a couple recommendations. This was one of them simply because this was new.
Yeah.
I didn't know what this tasted like because I hadn't had it.
Yeah.
But this was something new that I thought we could highlight for that reason. There was another cigar I'd mentioned because it was a lighter cigar.
Mhm.
And
But
Steve's like,
I don't want to go light with something that's 120 point.
exactly.
Right.
128.8. Yeah.
120.8.
Yeah, I don't want to do something mild with that to be kind of drowned out by it, honestly. And I think that's what I like about this. And we'll get into the ratings here shortly. But I think this cigar, what Avo is doing by way of Davidoff, I think they're doing some really cool things. You talked about the marketing. You look at this band, you have that I don't know what they call it necessarily, but you can't, I don't think, use that kind of silver dust look to it. Mine peeled off too, Nate. I don't know if yours did.
Yeah, as soon as I took the band off, you talking about the wrapper or
The band.
oh my band did not come off easily.
Yeah, so this is something that I don't think it's coming off on the fingers or not, but
Oh,
I don't
like
know.
a silver fleck coming
yeah,
off.
Yeah, so there's something, just a side note for those, and we'll have to when we have a cigar.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
coming off?
Yep, I get a
boy.
little bit coming off of my
You
fingers.
can't print these in the United States. That if this is the same thing as some of the gold dust, if you will, is it coming off on your? Mine's not.
dramatically.
No.
So you can't do that in the United States if that is truly that, but they use some sort of printing process that they use a type of ink that I don't know if it's FDA issue or whatever, but you can do it in other countries. Just an absolutely gorgeous band on this. I do like it. The cigar itself, when I was taking a picture of this today, actually for work / podcast / everything in my life, I picked out a cigar, took it out of the cellophane, and it was actually damaged behind it. Now I'm smoking that one. It is smoked straight through that, just to give a kind of a nod to the construction of the cigar, is that it has smoked beautifully, even with that damage midway through it, where actually the wrapper leaf had chipped off. You're in the binder. I think you saw it. Yours is not doing as well.
Well, mine this
Did you eat that? Did you
no,
chew on it a little bit?
no, this happened when I took the band off. Like the wrapper got stuck to the band a little bit. So because my band did not peel off, I had to kind of slide it off, and that's what caused the wrapper to crack on mine. Is which factory of Davidoff's is this?
That I don't know.
We don't know.
That I don't know. But it is coming out of Davidoff. I mean, that is the parent company of Avo. But I was going to say, with the flavor, it is, I'd say, medium bodied, which is nice as far as the body of it, strength wise. That's where you're sitting at. Flavor, medium to full flavor. I do like it. I know with the wind, and you may not be able to smell this as much as when we hotbox it in the garage because the cold. But,
what about
that's coming around the corner, by the way. We're going to be bundled up in the garage. So those watching this podcast will be bundled up with hats on here soon. But I do think that this is a nicely balanced cigar. And I agree with what it says on the box. Yeah, the floral, little like the lighter notes and everything like that. We'll talk about this very, very shortly about this. But the pairing actually has affected the flavor of the cigar in a nice way for me. Because with a lot of the Avos, you mentioned the classic. I think it's very nice. I like the classic being that kind of mild to medium blend. What they've been doing, I love the Syncro Nicaragua, which does not have predominantly Nicaragua tobaccos in it, to my knowledge. It's actually going to be just some of the tobacco in there is Nicaragua. The Ritmo is very unique. The Syncro project that they're doing with Avo, I think, is very cool to see, because kind of like what you guys are doing with the bourbon, like you guys coming out with some new core products, but also you're coming out with new expressions that are kind of redefining what Watershed bourbon means. And so I think Avo is doing that quietly, and it's not Davidoff's major product line. It's one of. So it's a little different, I think, because I think the Watershed bourbon is maybe slowly creeping up to be a spotlight spirit for you guys, which is probably part of the design. I'm not going to say it is or not, but it seems to be. And I think with this Avo line that they're doing, they're quietly doing that. And I think that if Davidoff wants to do something with it, you're going to see more ads. You're going to see more focus on the Syncro line because of the marketing. And even though Avo is not necessarily still with us, it's just the fact that they have an opportunity to branch off of that legendary personality that he was and bring these cigars to the newer smokers. You know, like what you guys are doing in the whiskey world, it's, you know, the barrel strength, the not necessarily everyday drinkers. You guys have those, but now you're also branching off and doing some things that are bringing some of the enthusiasts to a brand name. I think that's an opportunity that they have with the Caribe, with the Syncro Nicaragua, with the Syncro Ritmo, is that if you market it right, you're going to have some new people coming to Avo, as opposed to, well, my grandfather smoked, you know, Avos after he was done with Fuentes, or some of the other, you know, older names. So I really like what they're doing with this blend of tobacco. I don't know. I think the Caribbean notes of what they're talking about, I think that's mostly marketing, because again, you're coming out of Ecuador, you're coming out of Dominican, you're coming out of Nicaragua. I mean, these are staples in blends of tobacco right now. So there's nothing necessarily new there, but I do think that this is a very nice cigar that they've done a great job with, just all around. And if anything, I will say this, and I don't want to offend anyone that really loves Avo. I don't want to offend any of the people that, you know, Davidoff, is that one of the biggest obstacles when you have an older name behind your brand, you're up against your what you're known for. And I think that this is something that you're putting this out there, is that one of the things that'll hold a cigar like this back is the fact that it's an Avo. You know, if you're smoking, for those that are in the cigar industry, you know, or smoking cigars on a regular basis, that you're always going for the stronger stuff. You're always going for some of the more boutique cigars, or you're going for even the ones that used to be boutique and now they're bigger, like a Drew Estate, like a Tatuaje, like a My Father, like all these, you know, even some of the newer ones we have on here, like the Crown Heads that are boutique still. They don't typically ask for Avos. You know, Nate's in the retail side as well, and it's like in the cigar industry, you have these cigar smokers that they don't touch the Monte Cristos from Altadis. You don't touch the Romeos. You don't touch that. But you see that we've had it on previous shows is that a lot like Monte Cristos, like, for example, the second one tonight is that H. Upman Nicaragua by AJ Fernandez. You put a classic name on it. Now, this H. Upman's even going back to Cuban roots, but you put a name on the band of AJ Fernandez. Now you've got someone that is bringing in some of the newer smokers or younger generations of smokers, or that they're new into it and they like the hot stuff. I don't see Avo ever doing that. Yeah. You're not going to have an Avo by AJ Fernandez, but I think that this is something that if they could get it in the hands of some smokers, they're going to say, wow, this is really good.
I think Avo is one of those lines that kind of gets lost within Davidoff.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if people want to go towards some of the lower price point stuff, they'll go towards Camacho. If they know Camacho is owned by Davidoff, like that's going to be, you know, that $8 to $12 type price point. If they want to step it up from there, there's Avo, but then there is Zeno, which is another one of theirs that's creeping up right underneath Davidoff. Yeah. But then Davidoff being the flagship premier line of what they do. So people that know Davidoff, they know the Davidoff name, they know those cigars, but then, you know, those are going to be those higher price points. If they like the lower price points, they'll go towards Camacho. And I think Avo is one of those that it's in the middle, but it kind of gets lost. I don't think I think there's a lot of cigar smokers that probably don't even know Avo is coming from Davidoff.
Probably not. What do you think of the retrohale on this?
I was going to ask you about that.
I asked you first. Go ahead.
Son of a bitch. No, the retrohale's good. It's got a lot of spice, and it's not the baking spices. It's, you know, it's more like the, you know, like cayenne pepper type cooking spices.
Subtle, but it's not in your face, but it's got something there.
I would say the spice isn't overwhelming, but there's quite a kick of spice. But it's not so spicy like you're eating a hot pepper or something like that. No. It's just like a lot of spice.
Pinch. It's a pinch. Yes. Do you retrohale your cigars, Aaron?
I don't think I've ever done that.
So retrohale, we had this, and it's funny when we had the guys from Philly in the garage a couple weeks back when Karen was on.
Through the nose.
Yeah, it's through the nose because Bobby Hirschman, who's a big, I don't know, he's not listening tonight right now. He must be busy, but guys from Philadelphia that follow the community page and also the podcast, he's a big cigar guy, and he doesn't like the word retrohale. I don't know why. He never really explained it. He's just kind of weird about it. Retrohale is you don't inhale the cigar, but you draw it into the mouth, and then you can push it through your nasal cavity to kind of exhale a little bit through that. And it really lights it up. It's kind of like when you take a sip. You were talking about wines especially. You know, that was one thing that I learned a long time ago, and I don't do it as much with bourbons or whiskeys. Mm-hmm. But if you kind of keep the mouth open a little bit and kind of keep the nasal cavity open as you're taking a sip of something, it combines all of that together. The same thing with cigars is that if you push it through the nasal cavity, you kind of get what you were talking about, Anne, where you're around the aroma, you get the aroma. So imagine that aroma actually immediate, like that's like inside your head. Yeah, I mean, like you're doing what you taste on your palate with your tongue and your mouth, and all of a sudden you're bringing in the nasal cavity as well, and that all really works together with the aroma and everything else, and it really opens it up, and you get new. And that's what Nate was talking about with the cigar, is that you do get, I agree, a little bit of spice. It's a lot more complex when you do that, and that is something that I don't get from a lot of things with a band that says Avo on it.
Yeah,
I got a lot with the Ritmo, which the Ritmo I can't rattle it off. It was a 5-country blend though. They did the previous release of this Syncro series was the Ritmo, and that was something that was very unique. And I think this is a nice follow-up where it's going to be this like kind of complex, but also a very balanced cigar.
It's almost like what Ann and Aaron were talking about earlier, going from their 5-grain mash bill to 3-grain mash bill. Ritmo is a 5-country blend. This is a 3-country blend. So kind of simplifying it a little bit. It's not as strong as the Ritmo is. That spice on the retrohale, like I said, it's a pepper, but it's not like the heavy black pepper we get out of the BS Silver.
Sure.
It's a different type of spice there, but I think on the retrohale, that spice is very bold.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you're not used to retrohaling cigars, like if you were just smoking this, you weren't retrohaling it, it comes across as a medium bodied cigar. A lot of flavor to it, but a medium bodied cigar. But the retrohale would make you think it was a fuller body smoke.
Yeah. Because
there's so much going on in the retro.
Absolutely.
But it's also like when I talked about the whiskey, like when I talked about the whiskey, I got different notes on the nose of the whiskey than I did on the palate and then I did on the finish. Like there were different flavors through each one of those, and that's kind of what this is.
Yeah.
There's different flavors on the palate than there are through the nose.
All right. And with that being said, let's do the rating. So again, let's round it out. I know Aaron, you wanted to hear about the cigar. You didn't know it's probably going to go 15, 20 minutes.
No, you're fine. I can ease on out and watch it from afar.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for being a part of it. And I would love to have you back on with some of the new projects and get a little bit more insight as well. I mean, you're always welcome on the show as a guest, as even like if you got a half hour available on a Wednesday night and we're doing one of the products and Anne's here or whatever else. I mean, we'd love to hear what we're doing. I love some of the how do you say the bourbon chino? Burchino?
Burchino.
B-O-U-R.
It's not no chino, it's Burchino.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's no chino.
It's like
bourbon.
It'll be a good winter project.
Love it.
Takes a crazy left turn. It's fun.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Aaron, and guys. Definitely share this podcast with everyone else if you can. If you enjoyed it, absolutely, and they can hear from Aaron directly if they were not listening live tonight. So thank you very much,
guys. Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron. See you tomorrow.
See ya.
All right. So for us to get into the pairing, or for the whiskey, the cigar, and the pairing, that's a new one. No,
Here
we
we
don't
go.
want him.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'm in charge of the IT also. It's not very
Oh,
good.
boy.
Not a good setup. Jody, you're having both as well, right?
Need to make
Let's
room.
go. You're the
Jody
first
up
one here. So, Jody, we're trying to get on the podcast one of these weeks, and so this was a toe in the water type of thing.
But Jody,
what?
We could make room.
Okay.
It's not
I'm
scary.
Right now. Thank you.
Okay.
See that little piece of black tape on the mic? Nope. Where it was?
There you go.
Yes.
Like,
Talk right into it.
yeah. Talk like towards on that side. Yep. There you go. There you go.
All right. So we do 3 ratings. You've listened before. So the whiskey out of 10, cigar out of 10, and the pairing out of 10. So go ahead.
Okay, so the whiskey for me, I would give it an 8.5. I really like it. I really like it with the ice cube. It opened it up a little bit more in terms of it reduced the heat. I got a lot more spice to it, but I wouldn't be opposed to having it without the ice cube. The cigar on its own, I'd say I'd give it maybe a 6.5.
Ooh.
But the pairing together, I would up it to maybe an 8.5. Like I was saying earlier, I like really sort of dark, oily,
Yes.
really flavorful.
Yes.
I found it to be a really mild cigar on its own, but together with the pairing, I felt that they both brought out the best in each other. So the pairing overall, I'd say is maybe 8.5, 9. I really like them together.
Nice.
Where are you from originally?
Here,
Like always here.
Columbus. I left for 6 years.
Where'd you go to?
Traveled the world. Lived in Australia.
Okay. There. Yeah.
Little hint,
I'm
your
like,
accent.
wait, I used to work in Australia. But
Oh,
I'm
really?
like, okay, what am I hearing? Let's place it. That's it. Okay.
Go ahead, Sean. You have to. Do you want to? Oh,
Here we
easy
are.
on the handoff there. Sean, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just had the bourbon. It was really good. And I did put the water in it. I also got some butterscotch. like we both got it on the nose, and then
Mhm.
even tasting a little more, as time went on, I got that a lot. So it definitely would. I'd give it a 8.5. Definitely something I'd purchase down the road, and
You won't be able to, unfortunately.
ever.
Not batch
Well,
2.
not batch 2.
Didn't you say there's still a few bottles
not down the road.
at the distillery?
There are some at the disc.
You have to buy it soon, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can go to their bottle shop.
Okay. Well, maybe I need to go make a little road trip.
Again, Uber ride, easy. I mean,
There you go.
I'm just going what Nate said.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And so you weren't smoking the cigar.
I was not. I was enjoying it.
Yes.
So
But-
the cigar from last time
Yeah.
was like, fairies dancing in a field. Amazing. So this was very good.
Yeah.
Very good. And it was very kind of like you guys said, it was sort of middle of the road.
Yeah.
It was like it hit all of this is a traditional good cigar
Yeah.
that's approachable. Yes. So very nice.
How about rate the 6-year
I mean,
barrel strength?
help make it, so that's kind of hard. So
That's
I'm like
fine, yeah.
9.6. It's
Is
great.
that what it is?
Yeah,
9.6?
I do like it, but I'm very much an occasion bourbon person.
Uh-huh.
So it's like if this is your occasion, it's great. It's not
What is
every
not your
day.
occasion?
Well, bottled and bond is really really good.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I do like that one, but for
Okay.
it's different flavor profile. But I think this one has a lot of complexity and it really tells a story.
Yeah.
And it is among the last barrels that we have of our initial mash bill. So you're tasting, some of our original product that we ever put out. So it really is history for us.
No, that's very cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Nate, how about you?
So on the whiskey, I am going to be at a 9.5.
Ooh.
We're within 0.1. Very good.
You know me. I have a hard time giving 10s to anything, and
I know. I wish we could compare this to the batch 1.
yeah. But no, it's a very good product. I was pleasantly surprised by the complexity of this, all the different flavors that were there, which we didn't even talk about. The little flyer that you guys gave out that actually has the tasting
You
notes
don't need to when
officially.
you have Anne and Aaron on
Yeah.
here. I mean, that's
The official tasting notes.
We wrote it.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
but also one of the things that really surprised me was how smooth this was for being 120 proof.
Right.
Like it finishes very smooth. But and when I did my initial video on this, one of the things that I thought of, but I didn't say because I knew you'd make fun of me again for doing it.
I mean, probably, but go ahead.
So like when I first took that initial sip, I was like, oh, okay, there's the finish. And then I started to talk about the flavors, and then all of a sudden the finish came back up. So I was like, oh, it's the finish after the finish. I can't say that anymore because the last time I did, Steve made fun of me for that. So, but it was
after the finish.
yeah, it was like a delayed.
Yeah, there's only one finish.
I know. It was like a delayed
That
finish.
makes fun of you.
It was no longer like the flavor was no longer on my palate because I had swallowed, but then all of a sudden that flavor came back.
It
So
was
that's
a
the finish.
really good
That was
description.
the finish. So like I thought
I think you're
was
looking
the
at the home stretch versus the finish,
yeah
right?
possibly
Like the-
there you go. That's
The
a good way to
fireworks
put it.
festival where you think it's the finale and then you find out it wasn't the finale.
Oh,
the
yeah.
second encore,
Yeah. There you go.
right?
There you go. But no, it
Go on.
definitely a very enjoyable product. I was really thankful, Anne, that you could allow me to get a bottle.
And
Allow
thank you
you.
for this bottle.
Well, because I told Anne when she messaged me, I was like, oh, you have to be at the shop, so I'm not going to be able to be at the distillery at 9:00 in the morning to pick up a bottle. She's like, oh, if you come by today, I'll get you one. I'm like, cool.
Is he allowed to say that?
Sure.
Okay. You just did, so.
just edit that out.
Yeah, this is
Fine.
live. This is live.
It was fine. It was so usually the day before our allocated releases, employees can come by as well. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You
And
got to come on Friends and Family Day. So
Thank
it's
you.
good. Yeah.
Cigar, I'm going to
Ooh,
I'm
You
kind of
can't be the Russian judge tonight because Jody
Mixed
already gave it a
emotions.
6.5. No, I'm just saying. Yeah.
no, on the cigar, I'm going to be a 7.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable. It's typically a little bit. I say it's a little bit lighter than what I typically enjoy smoking, but then again, I really enjoy smoking the BS Gold, and that's a medium-bodied cigar as well.
Yeah.
But they're completely different blends, and like for a medium. So I say I typically like medium full or fuller body cigars, but then I love the BS Gold, which is a medium. I just love the flavor and all the different flavor notes that are in that cigar. This one, it's medium body. It's very pleasant. It's very balanced. It just doesn't necessarily have the depth and richness of some other medium bodied cigars that I do enjoy, but it is a very enjoyable cigar. Like
Gotcha.
I like this a lot more than the classic because there's more going on with this cigar. I know it's a different blend, but we've talked about it before. There are some cigar makers out there that some people are like, oh no, I've had their stuff, I don't like it, and they use like 1 or 2 cigars to judge that entire company's profile.
I think it's pretty common. I think that's also in the bourbon world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is going to be one of my I'd say favorite Avo blends. Like this one would be one of my go-tos in terms of Avo.
Yeah.
Just not necessarily my go-to profile, but it's still an enjoyable smoke.
How about the pairing?
Pairing, I'm going to give the pairing 8.5. I do think they go well together as high proof as the whiskey is and medium body that the cigar is. They don't overpower one another. Like the cigar still holds up to the whiskey because even the whiskey being at 120 proof, it doesn't come across that strong. It's balanced at that proof, and same thing with the cigar. They stand up to each other. They don't necessarily, for me, enhance one another, but they do hold up.
Yeah. I think we talked about it the last time that you were on, Anne, when we were talking about we had the 3 different barrel picks, and someone did ask, I think it was James, asked when the next, it's a while back. I can't even scroll back. Yeah, there's a lot of comments. It's great. But he was asking about the sugar and spice when the next picks are coming out because he misses it already, I think.
So there's one that we have in the bottle shop right now. It's called Founders Select or Founders Reserve, I think I'm getting it right. And it is one of no. I do, but it's one of Greg's favorite barrels.
Okay.
And so that was one of those barrels that when we first
he says, no, James he was the one that asked the next ladies of Watershed.
Oh, the next ladies of Watershed pick. So one of the key ladies just gave birth to twins yesterday.
Congrats.
So she's back in the game with tasting. So she's been like off the
got him out and here we go. Back at the
yeah. So Jen Murley runs all of our tours, our on-site experience, and she came from Rabbit Hole Distillery before she worked for Watershed. So we have very similar flavor profiles that we go for. So she'll be coming back, but we need to do one of those.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think on that show that we talked about, that the proof, and that's what Nate was kind of getting at there, is that the proof doesn't always mean bite, doesn't mean heat, doesn't mean, like it doesn't always translate to your experience drinking from the glass on that bottle. Is that, and that's what I really like about this one is that I don't have a good enough memory to compare this to batch 1. I would give this a 9.5.
Batch 1,
little guy or something like that, little sample.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a fantastic expression from Watershed. I think this is something again that will, if you guys were able to secure a bottle, they do have a few left or a handful left at the bottle shop here. There might be some out in the wild somewhere, depending on what market you're in.
OHLQ.com.
OHLQ.com here in Ohio. This is something that I think this is again one more iteration that you guys have put out that this is what's to come from Watershed, and having Aaron on with you tonight. And I'd give it a 9.5, somewhere in there. So if you want to put 9.25, Nate, when you're writing it down, is that what you wrote?
I put 9.5 because that was the highest end of
round up. It's just a really, really enjoyable drink. It's something that we talked about. If you were listening, if you're just tuning in now, scrub back or listen back later at a later time. It's a very, I would say, unique drinking experience in the sense that what I said, that it hurries up to the finish. It's something that I really have enjoyed, because when you first take a sip of the first glass, it is something that you get a lot on the palate. You get that little bit of a, that initial heat because of the proof, but it goes away, and then all of a sudden it comes back. You know what I mean? To Nate's home stretch, or whatever you want to call it. You can use that from now on.
Thank
you. Yeah, you're welcome. The finish before the finish, as he called it. This is something that I really think that there is a lot going on. And I think with the fact that it's barrel strength, it does allow it to have that play, right? Yeah. And then with Jody and Sean and other people out there, James that's listening, saying that, you splash water or an ice cube. I think this is something that is the nice thing about a barrel strength. Having, Anne and Aaron on, this is something that I don't think they normally would put water or an ice cube in, because this is why they pick this, is to drink it neat. But when it's you at home, or, wherever you're at a bar, you see this. If you're lucky to see a bottle like this, or something similar that is a barrel strength, it's your glass, it's your bottle. You can experiment a little bit with it. You can always proof it down a little bit. You can open it up a lot if you want to do that with just a dash of water or an ice cube. And this is one of those bottles that really allows you to make it your own. And whether it's straight out of the bottle, neat, or if you want to add a little bit of water or ice cube to it, it really opens up. So, I mean, there's a lot going on. And I think this is something that, again, this is something for those that have just had the Watershed Bourbon, the old label bourbon. That is the stepping stone for where you guys are headed. And I think this bottle, and the other one that I think we should crack for part 2, is the Bottle and Bond. These are these steps forward of where this is going for Watershed label when it comes to a whiskey, bourbon, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? You just put it in the classification of whiskey or bourbon itself. They're staying true to the roots of bourbon. And I think you have two people that are really involved in this process that we had on the podcast. We're very fortunate. You guys are fortunate to hear from them directly, that there's experience coming from the other aspects of the bourbon world that are really taking the Watershed Bourbon project to these other levels, which I think is exciting. The cigar, I think, is something that is, I agree with you. It's that classic, Anne, you were saying that you smell it, and it's just like, it smells like a good cigar. To Nate, you're saying you're comparing to other Avos. I think just objectively, I think this cigar is again, I say it's very well balanced. It's good flavor. It's just this rich tobacco flavor to it, and some people are looking for that. We talk about the whiskeys. You talk about wanting that really like barrel strength, something that's really going to punch you and all this stuff. This cigar doesn't do it. This is right in the middle of the road. Good flavor. We touched on the retrohale of it. I mean, I'd give this cigar a good 8.5 for what it is. We didn't talk about the price of the bottle. What?
$89.99.
So this is a
It's a special occasion. That's where I'm like, it depends on the occasion. Yeah.
Well, but with what you talked about that went into it, that is what justifies that price. And I think that's a lot of times when you guys are going into a cigar shop, looking at the prices of cigars, you're going in looking, at your liquor store, or if you go to a bar and you see something it's not just about the age. Yeah, 6 years is on the bottle, but what goes into the process, it really justifies the age when you look into it. If you look into it, and we're going to segue into part 2 here shortly, is the authenticity of it, is that if you look into something that says 6 years, or you look into something that has a $12 to $13 price point on a cigar, and you don't see any justification for why it's priced the way it is, other than the fact that it's just priced that way because they have a celebrity endorsement, or there's a pretty label, pretty package. This is something I think that the cigar really stands up to that price point. And I really have enjoyed the cigar. The pairing, I give a solid 9. I think this is something that you guys touched it. I'm glad we went with a more medium body cigar versus a mild cigar, especially the fact that Anne didn't smoke tonight. But I think that pairing did really well because it stood up to each other. And I will say the bottle actually brought more out of the cigar than I expected, honestly. So that was nice.
Cool.
And that being said, we're going to round out part 1 here. Thank you guys very much for listening. I want to say, with the patreon.com, you guys have been amazing. We have, and I'm going to really put it out there going forward where you can get some of the gear. And I am expanding that. I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we're going to have, and I'm going to really shoot to do this on a monthly or quarterly basis, depending on what time of the year it is, that there's going to be t-shirts available with what you see on the front of mine, the pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together. And they're going to be great Bella Canvas t-shirts. But so this month, I'm trying to get it up on the new site, which is buyjack.com/bourbonandbs. And you can pick out, now we have 4 colors of this t-shirt. There's no logo on the back as of now, just to keep the cost down, but it's going to be the front of it. And we're going to get a charity pink shirt with black print on there. And I will publish, I think it might be Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation is probably the one I'm going to go with, but I'm looking at a few others before we do that. And at the end of October, I'll be donating $5 from every t-shirt to that foundation. So something we can do with this community. And I think it's something very impactful that we can actually make another level of enjoyment from this show and the community. So you guys are amazing. And then Tinder Box at Easton for the Avo, Altitus USA. I'm about to light up the Upman, Nicaragua, and then also Be a Cigar Company. Anne and Aaron, who's no longer with us right now. But thank you for setting this up and being a part of the show. As always, it's always a great conversation. And I'm looking forward to the authenticity, which you don't know this, but we're actually going to focus a little bit more on you.
Get ready.
So guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. And stay tuned for part 2.
Cheers. Oh, Lord.
This bottle may be one of the few times I could use the word approachable for a barrel strength.
Well, I have King Chambers in my trunk, so that's also approachable.
That well,
King
King Chambers was what 133.2 proof, something like that. Or
I think I have that Elijah Craig one in my trunk.
132.6 because it was.
Did anyone try that? Do you guys like?
What, the King Chambers?
No, the Elijah Craig.
Which Elijah Craig one?
The toasted.
I have not. No.
I think I may have it one of the Bourbon and Bullet events I did.
Yeah.
I think someone brought a bottle of it.
I had a friend pick me up one in Kentucky.
Is it good? Or is that why you're trying to unload it here?
I'm not unloading it, but
I mean, is that why you're sharing it?
I'll share it. It's not like unload. It's not like terrible. It's just you have things you love.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay,
but no, like
I'm glad I got to try it.
Yeah. But a lot of times when we, Sean, can you show?
You just go in, dead end, take a left. It's the one with the toilet in it.
But no, like a lot of times when we talk about barrel proofs, they're 120 to 130 proof.
Yeah.
I know that King Chambers, I think the percentage was 66.3, so that'd be 132.6.
But it didn't drink like it did.
No,
like,
but
the sugar and spice actually drank like it was higher proof than that one.
It did.
It did.
Lower.
But what I was saying with this being 120, like a lot of people would look at it and go, "Oh, that's going to be really hot."
Yeah.
But it's not. Like this for a barrel strength, this is pretty darn approachable.
It is. And actually, so the 2 batches that we had it down to, one was like easy drinking and approachable. But I'm like, it comes out once a year. And this was personality. I'm always going with personality.
This one was a little bit more bold in your face.
Yeah, this one had like the bold and the deep and the, whatever. And so I wish more people could try, like, here are the 2 blends we got it down to. Which would you pick? And I would ask different people, and it was mixed. It was like some people that were like not super into bourbon, they were like the approachable one. This is great. And like the super bourbon people were like this. Right.
That's not your market.
Yeah.
What time do you guys open
in the morning? I think Kaylee's there at like 9 usually for the bottle shop. I'm there at like 8 a.m.
If you want a rookie rating,
Yeah.
I don't know squat. I do drink and have drank a lot of bourbons.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was killer.
Yeah.
So I would say, as far as rating, I don't know, like swirling around.
Right. No, it's fun and approachable. Do you like it or not? It's easy. Yeah.
So
So good.
this is Kevin. So he actually lives on the street.
Oh,
And
Hello.
he is so he's a friend.
I've seen Aaron before. This is my buddy Steve.
Steve?
Steve Green.
Steve, nice to meet you. I'm Steve as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
well, I think Aaron's going to be there in the morning too. So
Okay.
if you catch me, I'm on the warehouse side. I'm on the side where the door says tours. But yeah, we can see if we can get Aaron to sign the bottle too. It depends. I might come to the restroom like
And my wife texted me and said, "You are the personification of the term champagne bubbles." That is
So
you
funny.
personified.
I'm like, I think about that one like cigar. And
She also said Watershed.
it's like berries dancing across the field. And it's just lovely.
She also said next year you guys should be the official bourbon of the Quarter Horse Congress.
Oh, that would be sweet, wouldn't it?
That'd be a big one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but you're better whiskey than Crown Royal. No, plenty of offense meant Bobby Hirschman.
So if you guys are still listening on the live, which we do have several people listening on the live right now, we're kind of in the intermission, and we're going to get into part 2, which is authenticity, which if we drink any more, I'm probably going to stumble on that word a bit.
Steve, the cigars were killer too, man. I mean, again, I'm one of those cheap or inexpensive.
Yeah, inexpensive,
cigar
yeah.
Tips, little skinny things, but around a campfire with some beer. But
We'll
what I could tell that was that this is good.
When it comes to cigars and whiskey, there is a difference between cheap and inexpensive.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? A guy at a place told me that one time. Yeah, I was like, very, very neat to hear.
Yeah, because
I'm an admitted neophyte, but man, this is really, really cool.
Because there's a cigar at the Tinder Box that, in terms of volume, is one of the best sellers.
Mm-hmm.
And the price point on it, depending on the size, is between $4.60 and $5.40 a stick. But people buy the crap out of it because it's a good cigar. Like, it's a good daily cigar.
Yeah.
You know, it may not necessarily be the cigar for a special occasion or, you know, after a heavy meal or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's a cigar that's like, you know what? I'm going to have, like, if you're not doing jack shit on the weekends and you're like, I'm going to sit out on my back porch and have like 3 cigars, like, maybe that's the first one.
Yeah.
It's not the last one.
It's not a Rush Limbaugh approved
like
$50 cigar.
Well, so Rush always used to love the LFD Double Ajero Chisel.
I think I've heard him talk about that.
Yeah, that used to be one of his favorite cigars.
What's that a cigar? How much?
The Chisel, I think that's about $11, $12 cigar.
Really?
Yeah. I used to work for LFD, and that was around that $10 to $12 price point.
Yeah.
The shop actually has an LFD Chisel sampler in the store, so it's 5 blends all in that chisel. And I think at least 2, if not 3 of them, you can only get in that Vitola in that sampler.
Right. Yeah.
And so, like, I get it. You sound like Sarah.
Hello.
She's still there.
You there?
Here we are.
Here we are.
And Ray, to your point, even at $90 a bottle, this would still be at least a 9 because it's just a damn good bottle. And
I'm in by 8:15. I have a meeting that starts at 9:15. Come catch me.
but also, like, when we talk about
off the table.
all right, when we talk about that $90 price point, like, people also need to realize or remember you're talking about only 15 or 16 barrels.
Yeah.
And it's a once a year thing.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't going to be a regular.
I'm not comparing it to Bookers, but I'm saying
Like when they do
each
the
batch
little
of
book.
Bookers.
Oh,
Well, no,
yeah.
Little Book is different, but
yeah.
each batch of Bookers, they're all barrel proof, but they're selected and blended that year, and the different batches have different flavor profiles.
Yeah. One thing I like about Booker's what they do with the names
Mm-hmm.
is I do like that they
Yeah.
they distinguish that with the names of it, and
but it's kind of like siblings from the same family.
Absolutely.
There's going to be, a common thread, but the differences, the personalities, the nuance is what makes it fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's
Aaron likes consistency, and I'm like, I like personality. So we
Well, that's
we
why
go
you guys
back
are
and
good.
forth.
Good together.
You kind of see that.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, again, balance right there. That's
Right,
absolutely-
right.
Push and pull.
Yeah.
It's balance.
Yeah.
Both sides of that pendulum.
Mhm.
All right.
It's
I'm gonna
good.
Crack that part 2.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh. Why do you have any of that in your vehicle?
I don't. I looked in my trunk because I was going to stop by the distillery on the way. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I had a meeting that went till like 5:30. And then I caught up on email, whatever. I don't. I have Weller. I've got Elijah Craig. I have King Chambers. I've got a bunch in the back.
That's the
That's
bottled
our
and-
bottled
You got
and
glass,
bond.
right?
What's that?
You got a
That-
glass, don't you?
Yeah.
That's their
Jody, thank you very much. You want-
Yes.
so that just came out this year. That's their first bottled and bond.
Yep.
So 4-year 100 proof.
Yeah, we've done 2 batches of this.
Yeah.
Which what
Go ahead.
bottle number
Sorry,
is
sorry.
that? But the first batch we did was 10 barrels. The second one, I believe, was about 15 barrels, and we're getting ready to do another one because it's been selling well,
Good.
and the orders from out of state have been huge.
Really?
So yeah, like in Michigan, there were some chains that picked it up and want to put it all across. So we just had that meeting. Like, we gotta
Really?
blend some more bottled and bond. But it's bottled and bond it has to be from a single season.
Mhm. Yeah, we talked about that the last time you were on.
Right. And so the season that I have, my crop that I'm dealing with right now, it's like, okay,
thank
well, this
you.
is a little different than my last one. And so it really is. And that's not just true of us. It's a snapshot.
So the one you're working on now, is that the early season or the later season?
This one is going to be from the second half of 2017.
Okay.
Yep.
So the
Yep.
later season, yeah.
Yeah.
For those that don't remember, single distillate season, either January through June or July through December.
Right.
We can include that in the authenticity.
That's up to
I don't
you.
know where this is going. So
I don't
I'm like,
either.
oh boy.
You've been on the
Oh,
show before. You
but
never
I
know.
know.
You never know.
You
All right.
guys do any remote podcasts like up at the Mohican of my camper?
No.
We talked about trying to do this at Watershed,
Yeah.
and we're like, so can we bring cigars in among the bourbon barrels? This could be great.
We'll work on that.
You have that
for
little
2021.
patio out front.
I know.
Just reserve that for us the entire time.
There we go. We're doing a cigar
A what?
podcast, guys.
Yeah, we can.
And here's this guy that doesn't know squat,
Yeah.
but he really likes it.
Well, next time you're in, we'll pass the mic over to you for sure.
Can you guys believe how great the weather has been?
Oh, I love it.
Except for Saturday, the Ohio Craft Whiskey Festival.
Yeah, they say it's going to take a turn
Is
here.
that the rain?
Oh, for one day. One day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
I think the extended forecast. I'm in the lawn business. Steve's like us.
that's right.
And so Sean.
Oh,
But I think we're going to have to start thinking about a little bit colder, about 10 degrees on the average highs and lows
yeah.
starting this coming weekend.
Next week, yeah.
Mhm.
I want to be mowing my grass all winter.
It's
been a weird
Should have
year.
seen mine before you guys came over.
Yeah.
All right, ready?
Yeah. Ready.
Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 190, part 2, Beyond the BS. We are still with Anne Dimmick from Watershed Distillery. Thank you, Anne, for being a part of this and coming to the garage. I know you were kind of, I like the fact that, Aaron was remote.
Yep.
But you're just like, I'm in for whatever.
I'm always in.
I feel like that is a everyday thing for you.
That's it. Aaron has young children.
Yes.
And I have a
You're grown.
college
Yeah.
student. So,
You guys are empty nesters, aren't you?
yes.
With a big smile.
Yes.
Yes. So the topic tonight is authenticity, and I don't know where it's going to go either. It should be a good one, but so tonight, if you guys are just listening to the audio, please click back to part 1. We talked about the Watershed Barrel Strength 6-year, the batch 002. We were fortunate to have Aaron on the show as well, who is the head distiller, and Anne Dimmick as well, as a frequent, as she said, I think frequent flyer. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
On the show, which we appreciate you being a part of the show. I know we're still a little bit small, but I mean, we have a great community, which is great to have you guys supporting distilleries like Watershed and the show as well. And I want to thank our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton, Altadis USA, and Be a Cigar Company. And you guys, there's some exciting news. We have patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast, which you guys have been very supportive of, and that really helps us be able to do this type of a show and keep the banners going, all this stuff with StreamYard, with posting the podcast for you listening on the audio. I've also opened it up as well. There's going to now be a shop online, buyjack.com. I'll get a banner up next week, but also if you're listening to the audio, buyjack.com/bourbonbs. You will be able to get the t-shirts now, whether you're a Patreon member or not. If you're just a listener, the shirts are going to be these nice bell and canvas shirts, and they're going to have the pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together, and that's going to be available in this that I have on, which was a prototype. The gray, that's not one of those, but it's that kind of gray that Nate's got on if you're watching the show right now with the same logo. We've also got a red with black and a blue with black available in the podcast shirt. And hopefully by the end of the week, we're going to have a pink with black print on there. That portion of the proceeds will go to breast cancer awareness. So between now and the end of October, I'm trying to get that up as quickly as possible, and we'll get some photos up there as well. So you guys have been a great support. You can support the podcast by buying the apparel, be a Patreon member. Or also, I did actually start one for those that we get that question a lot, Nate, where people are like, well, I don't want to like sign up for a monthly thing. I just want to do a one-time donation. Mm-hmm. You can now through Venmo at Bourbon and BS. So if you guys want to actually contribute to that, you guys can do that through Venmo if you have that. I don't have PayPal set up yet, but Venmo at Bourbon and BS, and check that out, or ask us if you want to. But that's what keeps this going. The funds keep rolling in. You guys, I say that like it's like millions of dollars. No, it's like it keeps the lights on. You guys have been amazing that you're listening to it. Share it with people that you like, or people you don't like that they might like the show. I don't care if you like them or not. If they like the show, yeah, share it with them, right? Absolutely. So now we are sipping on the Watershed Bottle and Bond.
I'm liking some of these comments on the original bourbon we just tried. The fact that I am highly contemplating buying a second bottle before it sells out tells me it's at least a 9.
There you go. That's James Allen Young out there.
Thank you, James.
So, there you go. Sean was also asking, I think the last time you were on, you were talking about Pappy shots. Do you remember that?
The Jello shots.
The Jello shots?
Jello shots?
Well, I know in that documentary Neat, there was that one bar in Kentucky that the guy said if he ever got a bottle of Pappy, like in the lottery, he'd use it to make Jello shots, and sure enough, he did.
I've heard that story. That's from that? Oh.
Yeah, it was in the documentary Neat.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was the Pappy, I think it was the 23 too.
23, yes, it was, yes.
He used it to make Jello shots because he said he was going to, just to piss people off.
Sad and fine.
Probably good Jello shots, honestly. I mean, they're probably, depending on what flavor. When you do a Jello shot, what's your Jello flavor?
This looked like it. The ones he was doing, it looked more like a chocolate because it had a
chocolate Jello.
It had a brown
like a Jello pudding, really.
Yeah, it had a brown color to it.
That could have been the bourbon.
That's true. It could have.
That could have been any flavor.
There was a bar in Cincinnati that was doing, they weren't Jello shots, they were gels. And it was based on this really historical recipe. And it was Sundry and Vice did this.
Yeah.
And they would do layered ones. I mean, they were like the craft cocktail version of Jello shots. And they were delightful.
I had a family member for a party. They did Jello shots with a regular recipe. And then they did one batch where it used twice the amount of vodka. And on every single one of those cups, they put an S for strong. But then at the party, when everyone was like, hey, what's the S stand for? Like strawberry. And so people were like, this still tastes like cherry. I must have mislabeled it.
And they set up? Like it wasn't?
Yeah, it's still set up.
Are you telling Jello shot stories right now?
Well, you started it.
I don't have any.
So there we were on the Hocking River, right? And we were doing a cabrewing trip. We stopped, and there's people actually that had set up dramatically a like DJ booth on a little like dry spot of the river. I think they live there, right? So there's like a party going on. We stopped there. There's about 10 to 20 of us. And then all of a sudden, one of our guys, Tony, who he nicknamed himself America years ago, softball guys. So we actually were hanging out. I was very skeptical of this crowd. They come over with a bunch of Jello shots, which I deemed river shots, which I'm not going to trust at all.
Right.
You can't even trust your friends that wrote S on there and they just changed the strawberry. You know these people.
Oh, it's family.
These are they're family. Maybe worse, maybe better. So yeah, river shots. So then we get back to the campsite after we get back, and all of a sudden we're playing some games and all that stuff, and everyone around me is falling over. And my buddy Slack comes down and he's like, "What's going on, man?" I was like, "Dude, did you do any river shots?" He's like, "No, why?" I was like, "I didn't either. What the hell is wrong with these people?" This is why you don't take Jello shots or drinks from strangers.
No.
Especially on a river. Yeah, delivery, sorry. All right, so
rules for life. That
life
goes in the
lessons
book.
on the Bourbon BS podcast.
Yeah.
That's what we do every week.
Don't take river shots. That being said, talking about authenticity, I wanted to kind of, it's a good segue with Bottle and Bond. I mean, this is something that, you know, you really, Anne, with you being a part of Watershed and Aaron, who was on part one, this is something that, you know, you guys are really taking the bourbon side of the business to the next level, which also brings in tradition. We're talking about age statements. You're talking about some of the mash bills that you're doing, some of the barrels, all this process that goes into it. And to make this, and in my opinion, it went from just saying Watershed bourbon to now there's age on there. Now there's stories behind it. Now there's all this stuff. It's not just the story behind Watershed. It's a story behind the bourbon.
Right. But they're so intertwined.
They are.
Yeah.
Because it does actually carry a bit into that. It's not only is it the fact that it's traditional bourbon type of a product, but now it's a Watershed product as well.
Right.
So I guess, I mean, that was my whole thing. And I want to learn a little bit more about you. We've had, telling Nate, like we've had you on the podcast and it's just, we've hinted at what your background is. You're getting nervous. I love that.
I'm like, wait, we never talked about that, but
No.
okay.
No.
Yeah.
We talked about it. You were on with Amy, who's coming up again, Amy Schertzinger, who is the owner of McClellan's Pub in Dublin, Ohio. You were on with Kristen as well, that show where it was more of the women's side of the whiskey world, right? So we talked a little bit about that, but I kind of wanted to find out more of where you're at coming. You know, you're the barrel. What was the title again?
This week it's Barrel Master.
Barrel Master and Resident
Bourbon Nerd.
Right. So
yeah,
that's a title.
I run our aged spirits portfolio.
So when people are looking at this is a segue into this. This is going to go into some different tangents as well. But
okay.
With that being the your side of it, the way I actually frame this up for the authenticity is how do we authenticate ourselves and others? So that's where you probably run into that. And I think in the cigar industry, you know, we run into that as well. You know, like, what do you know about cigars? It's like qualifying yourself.
Yeah.
So how important is it to qualify things before moving forward in the conversation or task at hand? Are we too hurried to shoot from the hip? So I'll say this, I want to start with you, but I also want to talk about, like, I always say this, not to dive into the rabbit hole, but I mean, a lot of things that we talk about these days anymore, the last, 2 years at this point, we're getting into year 2, like completing 18 months plus of all of the stuff you see on social media. When you're seeing these posts, you see these news stories that social media or mass media, you see all this stuff and it's like, it's constantly changing, but there's very little for a lot of people before you repost something, before you actually share whatever it might be, you don't really qualify it. You really just go with what your gut says or what the echo chamber we've talked about on the podcast before, when you're actually surrounding yourself with like-minded people. So to take it back to just the whiskey side of it and you on this side of it is what makes Anne Dimmick a barrel title,
Barrel Masters resident.
Yeah, whatever it is on the card.
Well, actually, I will go way, way, way back.
Perfect. That's
Way
thank you
back.
for doing that.
So before I was in the spirits industry at all, I was actually a Six Sigma manufacturing engineer, mechanical engineer. And before that, I was, yeah. So, but before that, I was an international science fair kid. So every time,
way
I
back.
know, 4 years of international science fair. So published research actually before I was even in college. So I was like, I was a weird kid.
Smart is what you meant to say.
Well, no, my parents can tell you stories about like finding my experiments hidden in the basement. It was crazy.
Bodies?
No.
I didn't know.
Fermentation.
Oh.
there was definitely fermentation going on in the basement,
Formaldehyde
but
right
like
there.
not to drink. Just like, wow, look how it changes. Oh, it's
No,
kind of
yeah.
crazy. So every time, I've got my micro pipette and I'm actually making blends, I'll always and I have all the bottles out and the graduated cylinders. I always text my parents and I'm like, see, the engineering degree didn't go to waste. I'm
There you
really
go.
using it. So I actually do have a science background,
Yes.
a manufacturing background, and then came into the spirits industry. And actually, I used to drink vodka and tequila and all of that stuff. I mean,
Why do you say it like that?
well, I went to college in the 90s and Jose Cuervo was kind of where it was. And that's what we thought tequila was. And it's just,
Still there.
Yeah.
In college.
yeah. So
Honestly.
then,
They sell a lot of it.
Yeah.
right. So it was an evolution, but probably like around 2013 or so, I came to work for Campari,
Mhm.
which actually originally for their marketing agency. And so Campari owns Wild Turkey, which hasn't changed their recipe in over 60 years. We referred to Jimmy Russell, the longest tenured master distiller in the world. And that was where I literally learned everything. And when I think back, bourbon can be a lot like wine, where it can be intimidating and not accessible to people. And then now I really feel like if you like it, drink it. Like, don't overthink it. If you enjoy it, enjoy it.
Why do you think it's intimidating to people?
So there was a video that I shared this week.
Oh,
and
that video?
We were talking about
That
it
one?
beforehand.
Which video?
And it's like some TikTok video
Yeah.
or something where, people are just, it's unnecessarily pretentious. There is so much.
Oh yeah, that's been floating around.
Yeah. I can
Reminds me of
say,
some people.
we all know that guy, but I can say within kind of the space of bourbon, aged spirits, there are a lot of marketing stories. There is a lot of inauthenticity. You can't fake things like an age statement or distilled, aged, and bottled here. Or, I mean, it's so funny because when you look at bottles, you go shopping and you see script writing, reference to prohibition, came from the same distillery that literally produces everything from a lot of different, that sort of thing. There's so many stories. And so I really enjoy the transparency. And so Watershed is a great place to be because so much of what we do, you can come in any day and actually see it happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all seen those bottles where it has, the front label. The front label practically tells a story and uses all these old pictures. And
there's
uses
some
the word,
picture of some old pre-pro.
and
look at the
like,
bottle. There's some bottles right
and
here.
uses the word Kentucky all over it, and then he turns it over on the back and it says distilled in Indiana. And you're like, oh, I know where that's come from.
Which is fine. I mean, they make a quality product, but there's the story and then there's the actual product. And so I like when those are actually as intertwined, when the story is as close to authentic and the truth and the actual product is what you say it is. That's the best case.
No, I like what you guys are doing with that. And I think that reminds me, and I can't remember it, which is good because I don't want to say it on the podcast, but there was a bottle out there. Maybe Nate knows. They were talking about like a river. It was somewhere in the Northeast. There was a bottle of whiskey. They were talking about this place and all that stuff. And when actually you look into it, that doesn't exist.
Oh
yeah.
Don't say it. Do you remember it though?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I can say in the space, there's a lot of, you'll hear stories about, oh, this was lost, the barrel was lost and everything. And I mean, things are so closely tracked. You basically, because it's a highly regulated product.
Yeah.
So every barrel is tracked. Every drop is tracked, basically. There aren't really lost barrels, not today. So
Not today.
there's so many stories in the space, and it's really great when you can actually meet the people who made it, find out how it was made, where it was made, because every barrel has a story.
Well, and like some of those giant distillers that have multiple rick houses.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, this barrel got lost. We didn't realize it was here. Watershed. You take a tour of Watershed, you're like, yeah, no way you can lose a barrel here. Like I can see them all. Like,
right.
Yeah.
That's it. And the giant distillers, it's not that they're doing a bad job at all. I mean, there's some really quality products. And when you're doing it at scale, you can do it very repeatably. And so there's great things coming out of, mass producers.
Do you think some of those companies put stuff like that out there just for marketing standpoint?
I'm not
to try and drum up interest, or
100%.
Yeah, I'm not thinking of any product in particular, but I would say that there are a lot of stories that come out, and it can be mass producers, it can be like small producers that are trying to like create a footprint, but there are certain things that are actually regulated, that if you put this on your label, it must be this. If you put bottled and bond on your label, they are barrels from a single distiller, a single distillery, aged in a bonded warehouse from a single season, bottled at 100 proof, at least 4 years old.
And you're still governed by that, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So there's someone that comes in and certifies what you're putting in that bottle.
They don't really come in, but I mean, we have to actually report all the time, like what the inventory is, what we
Typical
use.
government stuff. Yeah.
I don't think, they can come in.
So how important is it to you? Obviously, with your background, I mean, how important would it be if you have a bottle, right? So MGP you brought up, Indiana, right?
Yeah.
Not to beat around the bush.
Well, there's only 2 distillers in Indiana. MGP and Starlight.
Yeah. So we had Starlight on.
MGP does produce.
Oh, they make some great stuff. You use some of their stuff.
So
we do in one of our bottles.
That was my point. Would you rather have it disclosed?
Right.
I think that's a big part of this, is that would you rather have it disclosed that this is something that is not coming out of Watershed, or if you're getting into it, right, and you're sourcing it, because kind of what you guys did originally, where you did do the 4-peel gin, you did the vodka, you did these other products that don't take that long to make, right? As long to age. It just said Watershed Distillery.
Yeah.
You were sourcing that?
No,
That was
everything was 100% distilled, aged, and bottled.
And
the first product that we had in terms of our bourbon portfolio was when we relaunched our 90 proof bourbon to include the barrel strength 6-year that we just tried earlier tonight.
Yes.
That is one of the spirits. Our regular 4-year bourbon, and then we actually have some barrels that we hand selected from MGP. And leading up to that product, like basically that launch, we actually tasted barrels from lots of different producers, small, large. There's a reason why MGP does so well. They really do produce a great quality product, and it had to be something that we like the flavor profile, because that's really what we were blending for.
Well, and on the label for your guys' 4-year, it says it's your 4-year bourbon, your 4-year bourbon aged in brandy or apple brandy barrels.
It was the age statement is 4 because it defaults to the minimum age, but it's those barrels are actually 6 years
I forget
old.
Exactly what does it say for the third one, for the one that's being sourced.
I believe it says bourbon whiskey aged in apple brandy barrels blended with straight bourbon whiskeys.
Okay.
And it's plural. And so that would be ours and MGP.
So my question is how important is it to you or to you guys out there, if you enjoy what's in the bottle, do you need it to say where it's coming from?
Well, so not if we didn't have Anne on when she debuted the new 4-year blend.
It's not just Watershed. I'm talking about in general. So you enjoy the product.
Most of the time, I don't look at where it's coming from necessarily. There have been a few where I've been at a bar. Like I was recently at McClellan's Pub, and I was talking to Amy because every time I go there, I want to try something I haven't had, and I would see some bottle that I've seen on the shelf at stores, and I would actually ask Amy, like, hey, can you tell me something about that? She would actually grab the bottle, put the bottle in front of me.
She's good at that.
And I would sit there and read the bottle, and I'm sitting there, just based on my experience, I'm sitting there reading it and going, well, this is a crock of shit. All right, let me try something else. And either because of the story they're trying to say, or like,
did you enjoy what you're drinking though? Or does that hinder it?
That was one of the bottles I was like, because I looked at it, reading the description, I was like, I don't know. And then I actually asked Amy. I was like, what do you think of this? She's like, yeah, no.
You didn't answer my question though. Did you enjoy what was in the glass?
Well, so then I picked something else. Like I didn't actually.
We've had this back and forth. Did you enjoy what was? You didn't even have anything. You were actually reading the bottle before you did it.
Yes.
So
yes.
So initially, the last time I was there, I asked Amy if she still had the Clover Rye. She didn't, but she had their bourbon. So I'm like, all right, I'll try that.
Okay.
Because I like the rye so much, let me try the bourbon.
Yes.
But then I'm seeing some other bottles. She puts a bottle in front of me, and she didn't really have a strong recommendation. So I was like, all right, let me try something else. I didn't try that bottle. I tried something else.
So you're qualifying Amy.
Does she need me to qualify her?
No.
But
hang on.
I'm
Let
giving
me
weight.
break this back down. Hang on. You're making a choice on this, right? So this is what I'm trying to get at here is that why are you choosing what's going to go in the glass? That's what I'm saying.
Because he's not going to drink too many things. So, like, you're at McClellan's, which has this amazing selection.
Yes,
it does.
And so, known, I want to try. We're going to set it up like a proof. Known.
When I go to Amy's, I want to try. Not only do I want to try something I haven't had, I want to try something that I think is going to be really good.
So how do you qualify that?
One is asking her opinion, because
that's what I was saying. You qualify with Amy.
Her opinion does carry some weight to it.
There you go.
I do trust a lot of what she says because she's been in the industry. She's done those Weller foolproof barrel picks, and so there's a flavor that she's looking for. She knows her stuff, so I want some of her opinion as well. Because when I'm going to her bar and I'm like, I'm going to have 2 or 3 drinks, different stuff, I want to make my choices worth it. I don't want to sit there and buy and have her pour me a glass and not like it.
Right.
Because that kind of ruins the experience a little bit for me, and it's not her fault whatsoever. Because she's going to carry stuff that is going to sell because she's in the industry to make money.
Right.
So when she puts a bottle in front of me and I read it, it doesn't really wow me with the story.
Yeah.
And then I ask her about it. So first there's my opinion about what I'm reading on the bottle and seeing in the bottle. And then I'm asking her about it. And sometimes what she has said has validated my opinion. So I'll instead pick something else. Okay. So when that happened, I was like, I'm looking for a rye. What's a really good rye? I've had that. I like them. What's something else? And she's like, have you tried this? I was like, no, I have not. Let me try that. And it was absolutely delicious.
So I guess what my question is how do you compare what you're doing with that, right? So when you're talking about the authenticity of it, right? So you're again qualifying things versus a blind taste test and forming your own opinion, right? So you've actually just laid out to me all these things where you're like listening to other people that made the product, right? So the people that are giving you the information, right? They're trying to sell you that product. They're trying to sell you that opinion. They're trying to sell you that you're going to like it. Now, all of a sudden you bring in a third party, which is Amy, right? So now you have someone else that you might trust, right? Which you did. All of these things are all before you actually tasted what was in that bottle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at is that how do you get to that point where you actually do a blind taste test? How important is the qualifying part of it to actually whether or not you're going to enjoy it?
Can I jump in on this?
Absolutely.
I am
You're
jumping in.
table.
Okay, so I feel like in some spaces not important in the
Okay.
bourbon space because there's so many choices. I feel like we as consumers all look to experts to see what's the next thing I need to try.
Hmm.
Don't you think so? More so
I
than
think there is.
so many spaces. Because, you know, if Fred Minnick says something is terrible, I'm interested in trying it because he said it was terrible. So I like this
Why
has
are you
got
trying
to.
it?
He said it was terrible. You know, like that's like,
You-
you know, it's interesting. Basically,
You want to taste terrible, or do
there
you
is-
disagree with his typical choices?
no, I don't disagree with his typical choices, but I'm
Now
just
you're
saying
interested.
that's interesting.
Intrigued.
I want to know my take on it, or you know, if some blog or something like one of the more influential ones, or like some
You said
podcast,
blog,
like
in a
no
negative
blog,
kind.
but like
No.
you know, they still
Yes.
have those, and people
blog,
read them,
yeah.
and like the. If there's a review that's like terrible, or if there's a review where like this is the greatest thing ever,
You want to taste it.
I feel like in this space, because there's so many choices, we do look for recommendations or anti-recommendations a
So you're
lot.
one of those people that literally like, you know, this smells terrible. Here, smell this. You're in.
Not really, no.
I feel like you are based on what you just said.
No.
This is one of the worst bottles I've ever tried. You got to try this.
Yeah, and your hands like
This is so bad.
Hey, pour me a glass.
Well, no, like
No,
the
there
last
was
time I went there, the very first bottle I had, I picked it. I didn't even read the label. I was like, I've seen that on the shelf. Couldn't remember what it was about. And I'm like, let me try that. And the bartender, wasn't Amy, but the bartender poured me a glass. And then I tasted it and I was like, oh,
oh
and then I was like, can I see that bottle?
yeah.
Oh shit, this is a cocktail bottle. Oh, my bad.
Oh my.
Not what I was looking for.
All right, let me take a step back here because I feel like, you know,
We're taking you off the rails.
no, you're actually zeroing in too far on one
Yeah.
point. And with you working for Watershed,
Yeah.
do you ever get qualified from people when you're
Oh.
talking to people?
So,
like, you know, Amy, we know Amy, right?
Yeah.
So not everyone out there knows Amy, but we do know Amy. We trust her as a
Mhm.
whiskey enthusiast, and she's very passionate and knowledgeable, and she's a hands-on person. So she tried all the bottles,
right.
which- I admire, also envious. But for you, you know, it's one of those things, talking about the authenticity of things is this is kind of where I want to go with the topic to
Mhm.
a point is,
Mhm.
do you as Anne Dimmick, the barrel master, am I getting that right? Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
I do
Resident
the blends.
Bur-
I do the blends.
blends.
Yeah.
But I mean, do you get questioned by people? Like, what do you know about whiskey?
So this was actually something I had a call last week with Maggie Kimbrell, who's she's a huge writer in the space. I was totally fangirling, and we were talking about this topic,
Yeah.
basically. And people have asked me this before, and I saw the episode, you know, with Amy about this.
Mhm.
And I have to say that when I see somebody, this is me as a consumer who comes in and says, I was, you know, I used to work in marketing, but today I'm the head distiller or something like that,
Yeah.
or the master distiller. I'm going to check you on whether or not,
You would check yourself.
you know, like completely,
Yeah.
because you are looking for authenticity. And I have to say, my experience in the space has been that nobody who ever mattered has ever treated me less than. The only times where I've ever had a bad experience would be like at a whiskey festival and somebody who's like drunk and really doesn't know. Like,
Yeah.
like I always remember this guy that was at a thing in Cincinnati and was trying to tell me that all of Wild Turkey products were made at MGP. And I'm like, he read an article somewhere, and I'm like, that's cute.
It's wrong, but it's cute.
so cute. So cute. But
Oh, you poor thing.
But no, I haven't had that experience. That being said, Amy is in a different space, actually owning a bar, and watching that episode with her and how people would come in and immediately talk to, if there's a male bartender, him instead of her. And true story, I did that. Like, not to her, but I had that experience. I was actually bringing some stuff we were doing a bottle signing event. This was within the last few months or so. And I walked in and I made the assumption that was the person. And it turned out the owner was right here and she was female and way younger. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I did that. I did that.
Why
I
do you think you did
remember that episode. I don't know.
Okay. We've done the same thing in the cigar industry, probably.
Yeah.
What's that?
Where a couple comes in the shop and we assume that it's the guy that's there to buy cigars,
and she's along for the ride. Right.
But then I've had times where either both are cigar smokers or the guy doesn't smoke cigars at all. It's the wife or the girlfriend that's the cigar smoker.
So why do you do that?
I think it's based on percentages. Do more men smoke cigars than women?
Right.
Do more men drink bourbon than women?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, then we default to stereotypes.
Right.
There we go.
And I didn't treat her poorly, but I went to the guy who worked for her and tried to drop off some things.
So you went straight to it and you just assumed.
I surveyed the landscape and I'm like, oh, he looks like he can help me. Here he is.
Yeah.
I kind of assumed they were all basically at the same level, not necessarily that he was the high. It was just, he was also not busy. So I walked up to him. So it was part of that. But
how do you think you could have avoided that?
Coming in and asking
questions.
Yes.
I'm not grilling you. I'm not this again. This is a bigger picture thing, right? This is something that it's having a conversation. It's asking questions, right? Some of the biggest things that you can really learn from people and learn from situations is asking about it, not assuming, but it's asking. And same thing if they walk into Watershed and you're the first person they see. Do you think? And this is not a loaded question. Do you think you have a name for yourself and you've been on small podcasts like ours, and you've also been behind, barrel launches and, bottle launches and all this stuff is, do you think they would assume that you are the barrel master walking into Watershed if you were just literally walking by the restaurant?
No.
What do you think they'd think?
If they walk in and if I'm not busy, they get a free tour. And by the end, they kind of figure out what I do, but it's fun. They just think I'm the really friendly girl that works in the bottle shop.
You are friendly.
I know. And I'm like,
you go sell bottles at the bottle shop.
Exactly. If I'm there, you knock on the door, come on in, basically want a tour? I'll show you.
Yeah. These two are going to go in there tomorrow.
I'll be there.
Well, and Jody just made a comment that made me think of a friend of mine.
What's the comment? Go ahead.
Well, if you, I didn't know if you wanted to pull it up, but Jody works in a very male dominated industry. Should be that one.
Here we are.
There you go.
What we got?
I'm in a male dominated. Do you want to just read it, Jody, or here? Or do you want me to read it?
It doesn't matter. I don't care.
All right.
I mean,
get you on the mic since you're here.
There you go.
Sure. I mean, I've been in a male-dominated industry for 18 years, and it is hysterical to see these men who look at me like I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm a young female. They refer to the guys beside me, and the guys beside me will be like, "You need to talk to her because she's the expert." And so for me, it gets frustrating, but after 18 years, it's kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
They'll learn.
Yeah.
But it is. I feel you. So
do you think it's more of a stereotype? So this is a question for you, Jody, because you still have the hot mic, I believe. But is it where does it start, right? So how important, again, going back to the authentic side of it, right? So they go up to you and they see you and they see a male, right? So now it's easy to, I guess, digress to the stereotype side of it. Is there a comfort level as well on the other side of it? Is that it's not about being uncomfortable talking to females if it's say it's mostly males, correct, that are doing that, right? You're male dominant industry, as are you, Anne. But is it the fact that there is a slow learning process between the comfort level from them approaching you, what they assume, like we talked about that with the fact that they should ask questions, because it's very easy to walk up to you, in my opinion anymore, especially where we're at. Like, this is the great equalizer, is literally walk up to your booth or whatever, if you're at that, like you do a lot of trade shows and stuff like that, walk up and just introduce yourself and start having a conversation. And that is the easiest way to qualify, because I think it goes back on the individual that's coming up to that person, is not the fact that it's just you assume, or in fact you're female and you're female going into that, is the fact that it's like, why are they walking up to the booth? I think it's more on the party of, you don't necessarily have to qualify the person, but it's like, if you want to get your objective across in that type of a scenario, which is very common, it doesn't like this small scenario or a larger one, is literally just to start introducing yourself and saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Who would I talk to about that? And if you said, it's me, Jody, it's me. Hi, I'm Jody Jackson. I actually can help you with that. If they can't get past that part of it, right? So now you're getting to the point where it's like, but who should I really talk to? Now there's a roadblock. Now it's a problem, right? Now that's an issue. But if you just go in earnestly and say, hey, it's nice to meet you. Hey, this is what I'm looking for. That's more on that person to really, they owe it to themselves. Like, why are they there?
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, it's a matter of trying to ask the right questions. And when you're asking the right questions, they understand that you know what you're talking about, right? It's not just making an assumption about the person walking up to you, but you're asking the right questions to figure out exactly why are they there? What do they need? And then you start providing them with the solutions. And they're like, oh, wait a second. This person might actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So what that reminded me of was a friend of mine who at the time was a manager in a cigar shop, female, and she was 30, managing a cigar shop. Another gentleman was working there as well, older, and a customer walked in. She goes with the customer into the humidor, asks questions, find out what the guy's looking for. She makes several recommendations. And then right then, the other guy working walked by, and the customer then looks at him and goes, hey, what cigars would you recommend? And he goes, well, what did she tell you? And he goes, well, she pointed at these ones. And she goes, and the guy goes, well, I'd listen to her. I don't even smoke.
James, who's been a part of this podcast tonight, he says the fact that people today still think that gender determines how well a person does their job is absurd. Brilliance is brilliance. And then followed up on that, it's almost humorous, is that, Sean Anderson says, that's funny because usually I prefer it's a woman that is the expert. I tend to get better explanations and less attitude. So that blade has two sides.
Oh. Less pretentiousness.
Well, less ego, maybe?
No,
no, okay. Not always.
There's plenty of ego to go around.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I think I think both sides of it is that, Jody and Anne here in the garage, it's like you already know the circumstances, sadly, to a point, but that's a linear history. This is where you're at, right? So, if you don't go into it, and I love Sean's comment for the simple fact that if you are looked at, it could be based on, gender, it can be based on age, it can be based on skin color, it can be based on anything. Really, the first impression side of it is, I think, what we're hitting on right now, is that what I like about what Sean says is that it's that you get better explanations versus attitude. And I think that is something that it's very simple, is that you go into whatever the circumstances are, whether it's at the trade show, you're going into a distillery, you're going into a conversation with someone about God knows what. It's the person. And you said that, Jody, is that person is, I'm not trying to get up on a soapbox here, but it's like, it's that simple. It has nothing to do with any of your preconceived notions. if that person, and they actually exemplify your preconceived notion, they don't know shit about whatever you're talking about, that's fine. Because that can happen as well. Like this is a true possibility. You walk in, you're like, hey, I need to talk to someone about, you go into a bar, right? Like you were talking about Anne, it's like, I need to you talk to a girl about it, and she looks at you like deer in the headlights, and you're like, oh, sweetheart, can I talk to whoever's in charge? But you can also have that with a male or a young or old person. It doesn't matter what their first impression is to you. You could literally be open-minded and be like, hey, yeah, I have these samples, I have this, I want to talk to someone. They just like look at you and like, please tell me you're new here. I don't care what you are, you're new. Just tell me that.
You assume the person you're talking to is the expert right off the bat.
Yeah, Kevin says, that you assume they're the expert because they are in that position. They're but to your point, Joey, you're at the booth. They assume that you're not. You're just
so trade shows, they like technical companies will hire booth bimbos, and so I think what Jody, so what they'll hire promo girls basically to stand in there to kind of whatever. And so it's difficult. I might be speaking for you when you get mistaken for the booth bimbo, but you're actually the engineer.
This is
you're
why
like,
we went into your thing.
So that's a reality. It's funny usually.
Anne is not the waitress in a miniskirt with a tray of drinks.
But I'll play one on TV. It's fine. It's fine. But
Go ahead, Sean.
That's real.
You just mentioned about the trade shows and stuff. Right now in Vegas, there's it's called the NBAA convention, it's National Business Aviation Association. So it's people.
Thank you for just like mumbling that because no one knows what it is.
Okay, you're welcome. Anyway, it's for private jet companies, and they'll bring jets into these places, but they have those girls, and they have known to bring in call girls. For
those girls,
clients too.
Right.
Yeah, it's insane the amount of people and the amount of money to spend in those places.
Yeah.
Well, and I know we've seen that in the cigar industry as well. I know there was a company that years ago when they would do an event for their flavored line of cigars, they would actually hire local models to wear the certain outfits that depicted each cigar. And so people show up at the event, those girls are passing out cigars. They either don't smoke cigars. Most of them don't smoke cigars. They don't know anything about cigars. They're there to sell cigars, but they don't know anything about it. They're just there for eye candy. That's kind of
They're there for a job.
Yeah.
They're there for a job, though. I mean, I think that's something that you might steer too far away from, right? Where we're at. It's like sex does still sell. I mean, you ignore that part of it. You can't ignore it. You can't ignore the appeal of sexual appeal, right? So there is something of it. You can have your objectivity. You can have that part of it. But if that is something of that, and that is the role of that, I don't think that you can negate that part of human nature. We had a nature versus nurture topic recently on the podcast. I don't think you can ignore that, because if you do, you take away that part of life, and that is, I'm of the opinion that you can't negate that completely. Now, it is a hindrance to the other aspect of it, is that if you're not that role, and now all of a sudden you're assuming again, right? I really do. And I feel like you want to say something about that.
No, I'm good. I'm enjoying the back and forth at this point. Yeah.
No, I think that so again, going back to this, I think you can open this up to a little bit even further. The fact that, with what we're going through, and again, how important is it to you to qualify the people you're dealing with or the issues you're dealing with when you are emotionally driven by what you're already going into that situation with, though?
So I always qualify if I'm taking advice from anyone.
How do you do that?
It depends on the situation, but are we talking bourbon space? Are we talking
taking a step out of bourbon space for a second?
Okay, so if
part two, it's beyond the BS.
All right. if I'm getting work done on my house.
Yep.
You know, basically, are you the sales guy, but you actually don't know what the real problem is? But, you know,
Yep.
I used to get so upset when they would send a sales guy to train us on a piece of technical equipment. And I'm like, just send the guy from the shop. Like, that's who I want to talk to. I don't need the sales guy. I don't need pretty.
Send the
It's
guy
just-
that made the damn
Send
thing.
the guy that made it. But, you know, he's
The guy's got to
busy.
do the work.
Right. So I yeah.
Usually when you get the person that actually made whatever the widget is, you're going to get
Mhm.
less bullshit.
Totally. Like, and then, oh, sometimes this happens, but here's the fix for it or something like that.
Because I know in my
Mhm.
previous career, when I worked in pharmaceutical and research, you would have clients that would come in, and of course they're going to talk to study directors and managers and people with a lot of letters after their name and
Mhm.
stuff like that, because those are the people in charge of the project. But they also want to come around to the room that the study's being done in and actually talk to the technicians doing the daily work,
Right.
because they want to hear from them. Because when I'm in the study room every single day, like, I have more hands-on experience and knowledge with what's going on than the study director does.
Mhm.
The study director knows it, you know, from a research standpoint, but they don't actually see what's going on in the rooms every single day. That client will come and actually talk to us and ask us questions, because we're the first line
Mhm.
in that study. We know more what's going on a daily basis than the people that we answer to that make 4 times what we do.
So I think one of the things that's great about having Anne on here is that you have someone that's grown up through the business, right? So that brings the experience. So I think that's
Yeah.
something that we talk about, the authenticity of it. Is it's not you. It's easy because a lot of times it does happen that way, where you have a salesperson, you have a tech or an engineer, right, doing all that stuff, and there's a reason for that, because you guys both being in that field, right? You know, like you're the nuts and bolts people. How many nuts and bolts people that you actually came up with that don't know how to talk to people?
Oh, yeah. I worked with a few.
That's
Asperger's was not a thing when I was going through school, but it was like all
it was
my
a
friends.
thing, but it wasn't classified.
My people.
So that's my
So,
point, right? So
right.
everyone fills their role.
Yeah.
You have to get to that. You have, again, that's qualifying. That's getting to that point. You have that salesperson come out to work on your house.
Yeah.
Those are questions you can ask, right? So this
Right.
is as usual. I think it comes back on you,
Mhm.
right? So this is something that if you come out to my house to do some work, you know, yeah, we're gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna have to get my roof done in the next, like, probably, I say 5 years, probably less than that. But it's one of those things. It's like, I want to talk to someone that actually came up through the business,
Yeah.
that actually did roofing, so that they're not just like, yeah, we're gonna tear all this shit off, we're gonna do all this and all. So it's
Not the guy who
it's
was
gonna cost
trained
you.
in sales. I want the guy who was trained
Yes.
in roofing
Yes.
and then learned sales later.
He's that rare egg
I-
like you guys that actually know how to talk
I
to people
don't-
about the product.
Right. I don't want the guy who was just a trained salesman.
So let me ask you this, because I have this experience, right? My previous life, my previous career was in the moving and storage industry, right? So
Mhm.
I actually started in the moving and storage industry as a 19-year-old that actually moved furniture in college, right?
Yep.
So I knew how to do it. I was trained. I knew how to do the service. I knew how to do the product.
Yes.
Then I graduated college. I actually became a fleet manager. I didn't know how to work on shit, but I was actually the fleet manager because that was the opening. Over the 10 years, I went into all the positions and actually had that education, but it
Mhm.
all was rooted with the service, the actual
Right.
product.
Mhm.
So whether I was the claims guy, I was the branch manager, operations manager, I was the sales and marketing manager, I was the general manager, it always shocked. I love this. I shocked the guys that were now, they saw me as the office guy, the sales manager, even like you're the external
Yeah.
consumer,
Yeah.
they're the internal consumer. And it was like, yeah, we can't get this armoire up. I'm like, all right, well, let me, I go out to the job. I didn't want to go out to the job, but I go out there and I'm like, so what are we dealing with? I'm like, all right, well, give me your strap. All right. So we use hump straps, right? So we do this. I guess all moved before, but But it's one of those things. It's like, well, have you done the crisscross thing? And they're like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm like, give me a strap. You get the bottom, I get the top, right? So that I actually split a pair of dress pants on more than one job. Just fucking squatting down, humping furniture with these guys that are, at that point, I was in my 20s, which is not that old, but they were also in the younger 20s, right? So I was 20 to 30 years old. It was one of those things that it was like, I do that. And I remember a scenario that was great. That was great for the consumer. It was great for the employees at the time, is that because I carried an armoire up a kickback staircase with a hump strap, and I was teaching these guys how to do it because they hadn't run into it, that I sat on the couch with split pants reading a newspaper while they finished the job because I didn't want to leave. But it's one of those things that it was like, that was the authenticity, is that I actually knew what the hell I was talking about to not only the consumer, not only the person that was hiring that job, like hiring the company to do the job. They were thankful, and it highlighted over the point that it was like the fact that we didn't train our guys how to do the job that were hired to do the job. But it was just that whole thing, is that I love the fact that you do the groundwork. And that's what that story leads to for me, is that there's a metaphor there to the fact that you really have to do your research. You really have to have a good foundation so that you can actually make a solid statement. You can make a solid opinion. It's not shooting from the hip. You need to qualify yourself. And also, when you're asking questions, you're qualifying not with these preconceived notions. You're actually asking questions because you're trying to have a conversation to figure out, do you know what the fuck you're talking about?
Now, I do think you can lead something that you didn't actually do.
I agree
as a person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I would say that the guy that I worked for when I worked for the wild turkey portfolio, he was leading all of the control states, and he had never sold liquor in a control state. And they all operate differently. And so basically, he would hire experts in his local regions. And you have to have an amazing amount of trust. And we were basically run like a military group in such a good way. It was very much like we were very bonded, but we were all like the local experts for him for our markets. So
there's a talent there, right?
Yeah.
So you're hiring people.
Amazing
you build
leadership.
a team around you.
Yeah.
That they actually build up your weaknesses as strengths.
Right. So you can.
You can do that. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah.
Well, I know in my previous position with my current company, I started at the very ground level of my current company doing residential door-to-door sales. That's the ground level.
Never gets better, right?
Everything's better after that.
Everything is better after that.
And then I was in operations ever since then. And the team that I was on up until recently, most of the people that we had hired within the last couple of years had never worked in this industry before at all. And so the training program that they were going through was teaching them how to do just their job, but they didn't know what terms were. They didn't know what it was we were actually doing. And so it's kind of one of the things I miss about being in the office is there would be those new people on our team that they would look at me and they're like, I know you've been doing this job longer than I have. What the hell is all this stuff? And I would actually go back to when I was doing the door-to-door sales and be like, all right, this is what this is what the company is selling. This is what all these terms mean. Wow. And that would then allow them to have a little bit better understanding of what their current role was. Because their current role was just plugging a bunch of stuff into a computer, click this box, click that box. Yeah. But they didn't know what the boxes meant.
Yeah.
So there was no context. So it had no meaning.
Yes.
That's training.
And when I was either still doing sales or no longer doing sales, if I was, at the cigar shop or just hanging out somewhere in a social setting and someone would ask me, hey, what do you do? Oh, I work for this company. Well, what do you do? Well, this is what I do. They're like, so what does your company do? And it's like, okay, let me go back to my door-to-door stuff. And I would just, because my natural background is teaching. And so I would just be like, all right, I'm going to, assume you know absolutely nothing about it. I'm going to teach you all the little stuff, not all the little stuff, but I'm going to teach you enough little stuff to where you have a solid understanding.
Yeah.
So when I did the door-to-door sales, there were some of the other people on the team that if they couldn't get a customer closed in 10 minutes, like they were on to the next door. If they couldn't get that
numbers game, it's a numbers game.
It is a numbers game.
Yeah.
But if they couldn't get that person to bring them a bill and sign a contract, like they wouldn't waste their time. They would just go on to the next door.
Yeah.
The way I approached it was I wanted to give the customer enough information to where they actually felt comfortable agreeing to a contract. I didn't want them to sign a contract and then after I walk away, be like, I still don't understand what the hell I just signed up for.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to give them enough information to where there was no remorse about buying that product. I wanted them to feel comfortable in what they had just agreed to. So
damn those morals.
Yeah. So even though necessarily on a daily or weekly basis, I wasn't the highest performing salesperson in total numbers, my percentages were a lot higher.
Yeah.
Based on the number of doors I had knocked and the number of customers I signed up, I had a better percentage than anyone else on the team because my customers, they felt more comfortable actually signing the paperwork.
Right,
they didn't feel like they got scammed.
Yeah. So you actually lead into a very good point about authenticity is how much impact do you think that it makes on others? The fact that, or how important is it to you that you build up your own authenticity? That when you are coming across, you're authentic to people.
For me, it played a huge role.
I know your answer because I think anyone listening to the podcast, they know you.
They think. No.
They probably do.
All right.
Pretty open book.
Mostly.
Which I think is a valid comment to anyone out there also is that do you want to be an open book or do you think that you can actually sell people on stuff without being authentic? How much time do you actually put forward that you are actually being true to yourself on what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, whether it be job, relationship, or otherwise?
You gotta like what you're doing.
Yeah.
Hang on, get Kevin the mic real quick and I'll take that bottle.
Well,
it's a lot of work not to
for
be
me,
yourself.
It can be. No, you're absolutely right, Ann.
That's so much work.
Sometimes people put more work into not being themselves than
Right,
they are being
right.
themselves or growing themselves.
You gotta like what you're doing or
Yeah.
even love what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And people can tell you're an expert at what you're doing
Yeah.
and you can project that. And
Comes across.
People will
Mhm.
trust you. It comes across. Exactly.
well,
Yeah.
I can tell you.
Steve, you want to get in on this?
He
You wanna
wants
get-
it on the
Oh,
bottle.
yeah.
He wants it on the bottle.
Yeah, you want to see what's on the bottle.
Thought he
All right,
wanted the
so-
microphone.
No.
Oh my.
So
There you go,
So-
Steve. There you go.
no. So
Welcome to the garage.
so I can tell you being honest about it. When the period of time that I was doing door-to-door sales, I actually did not like it.
Yeah.
I can see that with you.
I didn't like doing that.
Why? Yeah.
I mean, were you passionate about that product?
It was an industry I'd never worked in before.
Yeah.
It was more. I took the job more out of necessity because I had just been let go from a position a month before,
Mhm.
or actually no, it was. I'd been let go from a position and then was working at Kroger, and then I also got on at another lab, but I didn't like doing lab work. I was in lab industry for 8 years. I wanted to
Mhm.
get out of it, and here I was back in the lab. I didn't want to do that anymore, and an opportunity opened up with the company I'm with now, and part of the problem was the manager at the time sold me a job that is not what it actually was.
So you got sold.
I got sold a product.
It's funny. Charlie out there says ABC always be closed, and actually reminds me of obviously the
Glengarry Glen Ross.
Glengarry Glen Ross, but it also reminds me of the second iteration of that with Ben Affleck in what was that movie? Boiler Room. Yeah. Where it's like someone closes, either you or them. So that hiring manager closed on you.
Yeah, they did. But yeah, I got hired for the job, and then even during my initial training, I still didn't feel comfortable doing the job, but I liked it more than it wasn't that I liked it more than working in a lab. I just didn't want to work in a lab.
Yeah.
So even though I didn't necessarily enjoy the job itself, I still went out there and tried to do the best I could. Because obviously being in sales, your paycheck is based on how much you sell. Right. And so I always wanted to go out there and do the best I could. But for me, that also meant not sacrificing my integrity. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to trick people into signing up. I didn't want to scam people, or what we call in our industry, we call it slamming. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to slam customers. I actually, sometimes if we had hit our quotas for the week, like on Friday, we might have Teams Day where we would actually go out in pairs. And one of the guys that I was paired up with one day, who ended up being a team lead, I honestly sat there and watched him slam a customer over the phone. And I did not feel good about that whatsoever. And then like a month later, that customer, so the guy I was working with gave the customer my cell number in case there were any issues. And a month later, that customer was unhappy with something and called me.
Yeah.
And I flat out told him, I was like, yep, the guy that you were with, the guy that I was with that sold you, yeah, he flat out lied to you. So here's how to rectify it. Call our customer service, tell them this, and we'll take care of the problem.
So a lot of the authenticity is being honest.
Yeah.
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 And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's a full disclosure type of thing. And I think that's something we talked about in the past with personality types, right? So that's something that you can do in what you're talking about with sales, right? Which is everything. I'm still a firm believer that sales is everything, no matter what the conversation. It could be an emotional conversation with a significant other, hear me out here, or someone that's asking you for advice. It's not always trying to win. It is, when you're dealing with true sales, is it a good fit? Mm-hmm. And that is something that you can make your quick buck. And you're talking about those salespeople, right? So this is the tangent I'll go on real quick, is that you deal with those salespeople. They are going to be looking for a new sales job every 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. So if not sooner. I was a salesperson at times, and also I was a manager of a sales department in my previous career. So that was one of those things, is that
you were a babysitter.
Babysitter for some, but it was one of those things. It's like, this is the operation the same way, right? Yeah. So it's something like, it's like, as soon as you own a company that is doing these sales, you can do it your own way. Mm-hmm. However, while you're working here, you need to ask these questions, because these are products available. But there's always those salespeople that are trying to make the quick buck or think they know better. And this, again, think of this as a life metaphor, is that there's always someone that thinks that they will be able to fit their agenda on the short term, mm-hmm. that hopefully for their sake, in their mind, is that this will groom that other party to follow suit for their agenda. It's selfish, whether or not it's intentional, mm-hmm. but it is fulfilling their checkpoints of what they need to accomplish to make them feel like they are getting the most out of it. And that is something that someone like the person you're talking about that lied, quote, lied, I'm doing this on the air, so it's air quote, lied, but they might have lied just to close the sale. That didn't matter to them. To you, it did matter. Mm-hmm. So again, we're talking about the authenticity of it all. Were they authentic when they were trying to close a sale? Absolutely not. They weren't. They close the sale. That is the objective.
And I think they were authentic to that.
So
they were authentic because they wanted to close as many sales as possible.
You know,
that was their authenticity, was just trying to get.
I've paid compliments to people, typically behind their back, but I'll say it to their face, is that when someone talks about someone that is like eccentric or they're that type of person, it's like the compliment I'll give is that they are authentically themselves.
There you go.
Which
good, bad, or otherwise.
I admire that characteristic as well. Is that as long as you are authentically yourself, that's actually admirable to me. No matter if it's negative, positive, or somewhere in between, it's like as long as you are authentically yourself, at least you're not lying to yourself. That's a win. It's maybe not a big win.
You may be an asshole, but you're an authentic asshole.
You're authentically an asshole. I agree with that completely.
But like, you can get to know some assholes, and they can be the most fun people you work with.
Absolutely.
In some cases,
or
because
know
they're
and
authentic. You know that Bob is gonna say the deal, like basically in the meeting. Like everybody else is being polite, but you know Bob is gonna say how it really is. Bob is not really his name, but we all know.
We all know a Bob.
We all know Bob.
I know the Bob, and I know other Bobs.
Yeah.
But God love him.
Right.
Because that Bob is authentically himself, and other Bobs I know are.
You know what's actually scary is organizations who root out the person who will actually be the voice of the contrary voice.
All right, so
basically.
that you actually bring up a really good point. Is it better to be a fake you to make others happy?
It's a lot of hard work.
Or is it better to keep that person close that's authentically themselves?
Number two.
Anne's thinking. You guys can't hear this. I can smell it and I can see it.
No.
You can see those wheels turning.
Oh yeah, smoke coming up. It's not the cigar.
I don't know. I mean, so I listened to like a Harvard Business Review podcast earlier this week where
slightly different than ours.
It was very similar, very similar.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it was basically like if something is not going well in a setting, you can change how you respond. You can leave. There were like 3 different possibilities, but whatever. But it was like, I don't know. I'm thinking there's different things, but there's organizations where you come in and diversity of thought is not something that we do. And I really think like the healthiest teams are the ones where everybody passionately brings to the table, here's what I really think. We make a decision, and then whatever the decision is, we're going to align behind it, and everybody is going to pull forth on, regardless of what you thought going into it, we are all aligned and we're going to do this.
Yeah. Consensus.
Right.
Yeah. Steve said, consensus.
Right. Yeah. Being real, like bring your best information, but like when we make a decision, we're all going to align on this. But I think it's unhealthy when people don't, like if they're going to be like kind of hide what they really think or be fake.
In my new position with my company, there's been some issues over the last 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And I have not been shot. Steve's heard a lot of it.
It's not at the Tinder Box.
No, it's not at the Tinder Box. It's my primary position, my primary job.
It's Tinder Box.
I just talked to Steve about it because
yeah.
I see Steve more often than anyone else outside of my household.
Oh.
Well,
cheers, Jess. We share him.
That's why I said outside my own household.
There you go.
Obviously my wife knows all this stuff, but I also run by you as well, Steve.
Yeah,
but
Jess and I have our work cut out for us.
Yeah, but I mean, in my new position, there have been some issues in the first 2.5 months, and recently, my manager's manager had reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, how's things going?" And I responded. I was like, I think this would be better discussed over a phone call instead of over Teams messaging. Because sometimes if you say things, and I've had this happen a ton over the last 7 years, when you say something through text or messaging, it may not come across the way you meant it.
100%.
Either
Likely it will not.
Yeah, never does.
either good or bad. It's
Yeah.
not usually going to come out the way you meant it. So I was like, let's actually have a phone call about this, so that way you can actually understand what my issues and what my feelings are. And they're like, so how are things going? And I asked, I was like, how honest do you want me to be? Like on a scale of 1 to 10.
That's such a
No. I was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how honest do you want me to be?
10.
By the way, anything over 7 is going to have expletives.
You have the best work stories. I swear, every time I'm here.
If you
Like,
I was like,
man.
if you say 10, not only are there going to be expletives, but I'm going to drop the F-bomb repeatedly
Oh dear.
because
I feel
I'm
like that's a normal word.
because I'm going to be so pissed off with the way things are going.
So what do you want to say?
I've already said it.
Oh, okay.
To the person in charge. I have already said it.
Was it a 10?
Was it
No,
authentic?
it was authentic. It was not.
What were we at? Like,
It was-
so based on the rating, 10 being the best.
Yeah.
Where are we at? Going back to
Well,
part
so like I
Just
said,
7?
anything over a 7.
Where were you at though?
I was at a 7 because
Kept it at 7?
I didn't drop any.
PG-13?
Yeah, it was-
PG or PG-13?
Nice.
TVMA.
well, there were no expletives, so PG. Like
80s PG or current PG? 80s PG, you could drop some F-bombs.
yeah, you could. You're trading
Seriously?
places. Or
Yeah.
trading,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
Go on.
But no, I was at a 7 because I honestly told that person how I felt without coming across as derogatory, demeaning towards.
Yeah.
I came across frustrated,
I
not
said angry.
not angry. Yes, I was angry about how things had been going. I kind of backed off a little bit from just going full bore over the phone because obviously that's someone higher up than me. So if I sit there and just rage out over the phone to them, I already have a reputation at my
Charlie
work.
says, authentically foul-mouthed, not the best approach. I disagree politely.
Yes.
If you surround yourself with good people, you
I-
can be foul-mouthed. all
I
you want.
already have a certain reputation at my company, and it's prevented me from getting certain positions.
All right.
But
Um,
is this like the greatest job market in the history of the world right now? I mean, that's what
There's a lot of open jobs.
that's what
right
the
there
Wall
right
Street
now.
Journal tells me every day or something. So, I just, it's not like you're enlisted.
yeah,
There's so many options. There's so many ways to spend your life.
trust me, been thinking about
so
that.
many ways to spend your life. Like, don't be unhappy. There's so
Good.
many great
That's
things.
good. It's a good point.
Don't you think?
I
Yeah.
strongly agree.
Yeah. Authenticity. Are we going to talk about Tinder dates or are we going to,
Ooh.
authenticity?
Oh. Steve?
I haven't had any Tinder dates. I'm not going to go into that part. But
No, you.
I haven't had any Grinder ones either.
You-
I have to say-
but you.
I don't want. And this is
No?
not the podcast to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
I have been authentic. Yeah.
That's after we close the studio.
Oh, my.
Dating
No,
world's not good. I'll tell you that right now. Pull up, everyone. out.
I don't know. I went down to visit the child at college. And
How'd that go?
it was fine. It was, I
Fine.
went down. No, I took him out to dinner and drove back and, whatever.
Where's he at?
Should I say in the podcast? He's at OU.
Oh, you.
That's
OU.
fine.
Yes. And he had a little cold, so I took him out. We got some chicken noodle soup. And over dinner, he pulls up his phone and he pulls up Tinder. And he's like, oh, the Tinder, it's looking pretty good right now. Like, this one's actually hot. And I'm like, are you serious?
This is the world we
So,
live in.
Yeah. But I really, I'm so thankful that cell phones did not exist when I was in college. I mean, well, cell phones with cameras and video, they were like things that you had, and you had like 10 minutes a month, and they were totally for emergencies only.
Well, I think it comes
Call
with-
me after 9 when my
think it
calls are
comes with
free.
a little bit of
Yeah.
experience, and I'll say this is
I'm
someone
way older
that
than you guys.
you're not.
Well, yeah.
So that is something that is it's. I think I see it coming back around like that.
Yeah.
I like this topic because the authenticity of yourself, right? And again, being the authenticity of yourself is about yourself first, right? So, you guys have both been in steady relationships for a long time,
Yeah.
and that's something that you see that you grow as an individual, and if you remember back, right? So you look back, your kid now, right?
Yeah.
In college,
Ugh.
is he who he is going to be in 10 years?
I certainly hope not.
Absolutely. I'd say no, he won't be.
He is really wonderful, but I hope there's some more.
I'm sure he's a great
growing
young man. I'm just saying,
to be
like,
done.
it's something that is.
The cake is not baked,
I would.
people.
There
The
you go.
cake is not baked. Yeah.
What my point is that you bring
Mhm.
that up is that it gets more difficult as you get older. Is that
Yeah.
if you're not in this stable job, your stable relationship, is that if you're not comfortable with yourself, right, which is where you get these opportunities, in my opinion, is the same thing. You bring that up as a joke, but it is absolutely something that is important to a lot of people out there, myself included, is that when you are trying to expand your life into something greater, whether it be career, if you're trying to, again, it's something that you're trying to really grow yourself. You really need to be sure of your own authenticity, of who you are, because it's very, very easy to lose yourself trying to make your boss happy, make these, you're talking about like Tinder, make other people
Right.
want you. That making other people want you or make yourself likable is not necessarily just the date world. It's not just the job world. It's not just if you have your home life with your significant other, you have your kids. If you're always trying to make other people like you, you're not authentic. And I think you can lose yourself in that. And I'm of the opinion that the greatest things, and I bring back you bring about the dating world, and this is the one thing I'll say to your son is the sooner you realize at this moment who you are and what makes you happy, that's when it happens. That's when the job happens. That's when the girl happens, or the significant other happens. That's when it happens, is that you keep yourself as an open dialogue. You keep yourself as a open like sponge of information, and then you bring in that the people that really give you the base of the foundation of who you want to be. That's where you actually can be happy when someone else comes in your life or a job opportunity comes in your life. As soon as you settle and trying to make other people happy, that's where you will have a very short-term success.
I think
if at all. Who said that?
I think
Steve said that. If at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Because you're making someone else happy and you've actually fulfilled their happiness. And I think that's where
Steve, would you like to go on the microphone? Is there any more?
I think now. I think nowadays a lot of people do that when it comes to jobs.
Well, that's what I said.
Because,
jobs
like-
or otherwise, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
every aspect of life.
They may pick a job that they don't necessarily like or want to do, but it makes a paycheck, it puts food on the table, but they're not happy.
Or take a promotion because it seems like it's, it looks good on the outside, that sort of thing, but it might not be. It might get you further away from what you want to do. My mom was a teacher for 30 years or so, and then was a principal and a college professor, whatever. But when she moved into administration, one of the things that she said was, I went into teaching to be with kids. And the further I went in my career, the further I got away from spending my time teaching kids.
I know my dad, when he was at UPS, there were times where management positions would come up, and even with his seniority, he wouldn't even go for it.
Yeah.
And some of the other drivers were like, Dave, you always talk about all the issues that we have. Like, why don't you go for a management position? He goes, don't you remember how we all think of management? Like, I don't want that. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the suit and tie guy that all the drivers absolutely despise, or I have to make decisions that are going to make you guys unhappy.
Yeah.
I think
that's not who he was.
That's authentic, but it's also holding yourself back.
Both. Yeah.
Yeah, both.
Yeah. So like that's a tough thing. Like you really have to search in yourself, because you can sometimes you'll always have more opportunities than you can actually realistically take advantage of. Don't you think? I mean, really, there's people will take your time.
Say it again, because that's actually a very impactful statement.
I heard it on a podcast in the last 24 hours, but you will always have more opportunities than you can realistically take advantage of. So you do have to pick and choose.
Yes.
I mean, people will take your time. And
People
some
will
of them
take
are
your
for
time. I
really
like
good
that.
causes. There's lots of really good causes, but you do have to choose
Yes.
what you're going to do. Yeah.
All right. So we're getting to that point.
We're everywhere.
Love this. We can
Yeah.
go until tomorrow.
Sure.
No, not sure. We could, but
We're good.
It's another hour.
No. Yeah.
Pump the brakes real quick. Closing remarks. Part 2. You guys have been amazing. I see a good viewership out there, and love the audience out there.
This has been our best
Yes.
audience ever.
Best audience ever.
Yes.
Everyone's authentic.
We are all authentic. So cheers to that.
Oh, you should have seen a few weeks ago when there were 9 people
Oh.
back here, and
Come on,
half
I
of
was
them,
feeling good.
yeah, half of
Come
them were
on.
from Philly.
Bye.
Those guys were.
Best audience ever. She just said it.
Best audience ever.
No, I was just saying, like
No,
that
fuck-
crowd.
fuck
That
Bobby
crowd
Hirschman.
was authentic.
Fuck Bobby Hirschman.
He's not
Closing
listening
remarks.
right now anyway.
All right. So closing remarks on authenticity. Nate,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So the way I think about authenticity is being your true self, regardless of who's around.
Yes.
And the reason I phrase it that way is if you are the same person with group A as you are with group B or C or however many different groups you interact with, if all of a sudden there's a mix between those groups and you're still the same exact person, regardless of how different those two groups were, the people in each one of those that are crossing over, they're still going to see the same you. You're not putting on a facade for this group and a facade for that group. You're the same person regardless of who you interact with. And kind of go with something that Sean Anderson had said. It's a lot easier to keep track of if you're just yourself all the time. If you're trying to be a different person with all these different groups, you can lose, you can forget who you're trying to be at sometimes.
Yeah.
So like if
Trying to
you're-
make other people happy.
if you interact with your church group differently than your work group or your friend group, but then all of a sudden you're hanging out with your work group, but you're treating them like you're in your friend group. Like some people will be like, wait a minute, I've never seen you like this. Like, who the hell is this person?
Yeah.
Like,
There's that.
but if you're the same person all the time, it's like, no, this is me. This is
Let me interject real quick. Everyone always interjects in my closing remarks. How do you know who you are?
So I would say that for the most part, I am the same person now as I was when I was in high school.
You think that's common to those listeners out there?
Probably not.
Okay, so
because
how do you know who you are?
I would say some people may not, because of life experiences, some people may have been this person when they were in high school, and then when they went to college and had different experience, they became someone else.
Okay.
Then when they got into the job field, they became a different person. Then when they got into a serious relationship, they became a different person. Like they were one person when they were in college and just dating whoever, but then once it actually came time to actually settle down and actually try and find a significant other, they became a different person. I know sometimes we've talked about, or especially in society, like sometimes you give off an impression when you're first dating someone in order to try and have that relationship and get married, and then all of a sudden once you get to that point, it's like, okay, now I can be who I really am. We've seen that happen. There's a lot of people that have done that. And
we're gonna watch The Real Housewives tonight, baby.
That's still happening.
God, I hope not.
What city?
We have only watched the Salt Lake City one.
Go Obets.
Don't watch.
I went to Hamilton.
No.
The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. It's like
No.
kind of Mormon and
no. That's not a real.
so great.
Well,
So great. I've watched no other episode, I've watched no other seasons except for that one, and
shit show.
he's there for it with me.
My
yeah.
thing, my thing
We
is
is,
watched
good.
together. Yeah.
Find a common ground.
Yeah.
my thing is, I'm gonna be who I am, and
Do you grow?
you can still grow. You can.
No, I'm just asking you. Do you grow?
You can grow.
If you're the same person as you were in high school.
I think he says at the core.
Exactly.
This is what you're saying. Like
You-
the
you can-
core
Yeah.
foundation.
You can still be the same
Mhm.
person you are to the core and
Mhm.
still develop and still grow, but you still have that same
So you don't
foundation.
lose yourself.
You can have a bourbon that is a really good
Oh,
distillate, and it goes back, and then it is still, it's good when it's like young and whatever. It's approachable and it's great, and it can get really amazing after a few more years. But at the core, it's still good, and I get what you're saying. Actually,
Yeah, like I mean, I'm
Yeah.
to my core, I'm still the same person
Yep.
as a.
No, I know. Everyone interjects in my closure, Mark. I'm trying to do
I'll
it one
interject.
time.
It'll be fine.
Hey, we both did.
No,
but yeah.
I'm still the same. I'm still
Hey, calm down.
yes,
I'm
the
still-
authenticity
to my core. I'm still the same
Yeah.
person I was 20 years ago.
right.
I have more experience, more knowledge than I did 20 years ago, obviously. But who I am, as a person, if you strip away everything else, I'm still the same person.
Yeah.
When I
You better?
Hopefully.
well, if I thought my core was pretty good when I was in high school, and I still have that same core now, I hope.
That's
I mean,
my point. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the I always prided myself on integrity when I was in high school, and so when I took a job in sales in multiple industries that I've had sales roles in, I still kept that same level of integrity,
Yeah.
even though it may not have benefited my paycheck.
Mhm.
I still felt comfortable being who I was because I wasn't changing myself. I wasn't trying to pretend I was someone I was not.
Okay.
And so at the end of the day, I could still go home and feel good about who I was as a person because I didn't sacrifice who I was.
Right.
I didn't have to
That's
pretend.
important.
Yeah. And I mean, so what my core is, I am happy about. Am I necessarily happy with certain jobs that I've had? No. But I still was the same person to the core as I was in anywhere in that position. Even if I didn't like that position, I didn't like what I was selling, I didn't like what I was doing, I was still comfortable with myself because I wasn't going to sacrifice who I was.
And how about you?
Oh, closing remarks, authenticity. So,
Welcome back to the Bourbon BS podcast.
thank you. Authenticity. I think I'm actually going to stay on the same train that Nate was on, and the whole being authentic is thinking about the things that you do that are hard for other people, but they just come so easy to you, and the things that just automatically give you joy, and the things that you were interested in really when you go back to the teenage years or stuff, following your curiosities, because it can be easy in this life to get caught up in things that people around us are interested in and want to reward us for. But when you think back to, these are the things that I really enjoy and like just I can geek out on, that's authentic. Do more of that.
Is that what you're doing? That's what you do right now.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
I mean, I didn't geek out on bourbon when I was in high school.
Oh, but
I didn't drink till college. No, but in general, like, follow things you're interested in, whether it be like larval stages of clams and whatever, or bourbon, you know, like zoology, fermentation. It's all fun. Yeah.
The thing I like about like the tobacco and also the bourbon side is there is a bit of tradition there. Tradition actually brings in your core, like you're talking about, Nate. You don't reinvent the wheel, but I think a lot of times when we talk about authenticity, it's something that we don't look at a whole lot. We actually diagnose. We don't dive into it enough. Like we let emotion take over. We let old times. That's why I was asking the questions, Nate, about like you and like your high school self. How many years ago was that?
I graduated in 2002, so next year will be my 20 years.
20 years later.
Yep.
There will be a core, and I admire that about you, and I admire that about everyone else out there that feels the same way, but you have to evolve. You do. I think that evolution of you as a person brings in the core, and that is the strongest side of it. But you always have to have that open line of communication, an open line of an intake. That things aren't always the same. But there's always a but. I like the fact that people are always listening to each other. And this is giving a lot of credit to people that you are listening to other people. And I think that there's something there that sometimes if you have your opinion, you know, almost 20 years ago, Nate, like myself included, I had my opinions. I have an authentic opinion about things, but I'm also open. I want to have a conversation, whether it be about like the bourbon world or the cigar world or friendships or relationships or social issues, all of that stuff. I know that one of the biggest shortcomings that we have in the U.S. right now and across the world is there is a lack of ears of listening to why people think the way they think. Everyone thinks the way they think. I'm not saying that that's it, but if you don't agree, now it's a different conversation. And it's not okay. I like the fact that people can have a conversation and learn from each other. And I think the authenticity side of it is that when we're talking about the topic tonight is something that if you are the easy one is, do you qualify that opinion or that statement, whether it be about something as simple as bourbon or cigars, which we can talk objectively about, you know, we can talk subjectively about as well. But the bigger issues when it comes down to personal, professional, or other relationships is something that you can actually, you take your core, like you were talking about, Nate, who you were 15 to 20 years ago.
Mhm.
That's not the world today. Now it's about the fact that you actually can introduce your experience, the authenticity versus the spur of the moment. And that's the whole thing that I look at, is that we're doing this podcast tonight, is that we have an opportunity to talk about this topic of authenticity. Is we can learn from each other if we allow ourselves to hear each other saying their opinion. And the authenticity is about the appreciation of that, is appreciating where the other person's coming from. And I think that's the biggest shortcoming of it, is that you go into a conversation, no matter what the issue is, no matter what you talk about bourbon, you can talk about cigars, you can talk about any other things that are going on. But when it comes down to it, is that if you go in just on your experience and your authenticity, you absolutely walk into that and negating the authenticity of that other opinion.
Well, no, there are certain issues, call them social issues, where the way I view that issue now is different than I viewed it 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
But I didn't have to change who I am as a person to change my opinion.
I get that.
I think you guys are saying the same thing in two different ways.
I think you're right.
Because you can have an open mind, but that doesn't mean you have an empty one.
Yes.
And so you've got your core experiences and your values that come. No, it's fine, but you have your core experiences, but you as a 17-year-old, while there's this foundation, basically, doesn't have the information and it's like aging bourbon in a barrel. It's like the difference between grape juice and a very fine wine. And that's usually I go to that one more. Like grape juice, it's sweet, it's approachable, it's really fun. You can drink a lot of it. But a fine wine takes years, but it starts out, as the grape juice.
Yeah.
And so it starts out, here's the core, but then there's things that happen and there's seasons and there's changes and right, you grow and learn.
Authenticity does the same thing.
Yeah. Now, if you are not open to growing and learning and changing, that's not good. But I think both of you guys are saying the exact same thing. Because you are talking about like different experiences and coming in, but that core of who you are is still the same. And the different experiences come in. Yes.
Yeah.
You're just saying it different ways. We all agree. Cheers.
Well, early.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say,
cut this off.
at the end of at the end of
And just mic dropped us.
Thanks for joining us on the Bourbon and BS podcast. Join us next week. I'm like Delilah. Delilah.
I might hit it.
What are we
Right
saying?
us off.
Oh.
Happy Whiskey Wednesday.
Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Thanks, guys.
From Anne Dimmick from Watershed Distillery.
Cheers.